Good morning. Breaking news as the Prime Minister is criticised for his response to Iran.
Well, it comes after Sir Keir Starmer said that the UK bases could be used by the US to strike Iran, but he stopped short of backing the war.
The United States has requested permission to use British bases. We have taken the decision to accept this request.
After sources confirm the British RAF base in Cyprus was targeted by 2 drones, it's only a matter of time now until the UK gets directly involved.
Donald Trump returns to the White House as he warns Americans more US personnel could lose their lives.
Combat operations continue at this time in full force, and they will continue until all of our objectives are achieved.
Elsewhere today, the Home Secretary exclusively tells GB News that she would be willing to live next to a migrant camp. Here's a sneak peek of that interview.
And would you live next door to Krober or next door to a migrant camp?
Well, look, I mean, I'm in a constituency that's had asylum hotels as well.
Happy, would you, with your children?
Look, I do understand, but look, we've got to put people somewhere.
Meanwhile, Reform's Treasury spokesman Robert Jenrick says he'll reveal shocking information about the Chancellor at 8:30 this morning. Stay tuned for that.
Hello there, good morning. It's the first week of meteorological spring. For some, that means sunshine. For others, it's quite a wet day in store. Stay tuned and I'll have all the details.
Good morning, it's just gone 6 o'clock. I'm Ellie Costello.
And I'm Mark White. This is GB News Breakfast.
And Mark, you've got some breaking news for us.
Yeah, listen, it's a morning of breaking developments, things moving very fast in terms of the operations against Iran. And we're going to bring you throughout breakfast this morning all of the latest information as it comes in. It's going to be a breakfast show that is just effectively dominated by what is unfolding in Iran and the wider Middle East. Right, the latest lines that are coming through to us are of an F-15 combat jet, a US combat jet, shot down, it seems, in a friendly fire incident. We can bring you these images now. This is in Kuwait. You can see that F-15 there on fire, spiralling round in these dramatic images there as it hurtles towards the ground, seemingly having been struck by either US missile fire or perhaps Kuwaiti missile fire. Regardless, we believe it was a friendly fire incident. We have that same incident now from a different angle that we can show you as well. You're looking actually at the images from the ground of the parachute for one of the crewmen. So the 2 crew on board the F-15 managed to eject safely from this aircraft on the ground. We've got images of one of the crew in the back of a vehicle, actually, preparing to take him off to hospital. He looks uninjured, thankfully. These ejector seats, invented, by the way, by the British, have saved so many lives right around the world. So an unfortunate incident, a serious incident, but it seems to have been an incident of friendly fire in Kuwait where one of their own combat jets was shot down over Kuwaiti airspace. As I say, Ellie, listen, this is just one of so many developments overnight and this morning. Another significant development to tell you about is what unfolded in Cyprus. RAF Akrotiri, that British sovereign base on Cyprus, the confirmation now from sources that it wasn't just targeted by one drone, but 2 drones. One drone impacted RAF Akrotiri. The other was apparently shot down before that. I should say you're looking at images there again of Kuwait. This is a US airbase in Kuwait being impacted by a drone attack there, and US personnel who are shooting these images, quite shocked by the nature of what has been happening there. That's going back to the F-15 again. But so Akrotiri, a very important development that we want to get into as well. In addition to that, as we speak, there is a fresh wave of attacks going into Iran from Israel and the US this morning, and a retaliatory series of strikes now coming out this morning from the Iranians, targeting not just Israel, but these various states around Iran. We're talking about the Gulf states in Saudi Arabia and Kuwait, as we've just been talking about, Bahrain and Dubai as well. Multiple explosions heard in Dubai. A very serious, and it seems, sadly, escalating situation.
Yeah, absolutely, Mark. Thank you for giving us, getting us across the picture there. In a sense that the conflict is spreading as well. Also got this line from Lebanon's Ministry of Health. They've released an initial casualty count from recent Israeli airstrikes. They're reporting that 31 people have been killed and 149 people have been injured. Of course, it's only been a few hours since Hezbollah decided to join the fight. So those are breaking lines that we've had in the past few hours. The Prime Minister has given the US permission to use UK bases to destroy Iranian missiles. So let's listen to that announcement that was made by the Prime Minister last night.
The only way to stop the threat is to destroy the missiles at source, in their storage depots or the launchers which are used to fire the missiles. The United States has requested permission to use British bases for that specific and limited defensive purpose. We have taken the decision to accept this request.
I'm sorry, Ellie, but this, this was just couched in legal niceties throughout that speech again. Yeah, we're in it. We're, allowing the US to use our bases, but we're not in it, by the way. Get off the fence, I think.
Very specific legal language, isn't it? And he does use the word specific. He uses the word limited there. This comes after the RAF base in Cyprus has been hit by not one drone, but two.
Well, the US president arrived back in Washington, D.C. last night from Mar-a-Lago and set out his objectives 48 hours after US and Israeli forces eliminated Iran's top command.
Combat operations continue at this time in full force, and they will continue until all of our objectives are achieved. We have very strong objectives. They could have done something 2 weeks ago, but they just couldn't get there. Earlier today, CENTCOM shared the news that 3 U.S. military service members have been killed in action. As one nation, we grieve for the true American patriots who have made the ultimate sacrifice.
Well, joining us now in the studio is Robert Fox, defence editor at the Evening Standard. And Robert, we were just reflecting there on Keir Starmer's announcement yesterday that the UK would allow the US to use their air bases. Very careful legal language being used by him. What did you make of it?
Labour Prime Ministers get into terrible trouble with legal advice on wars in the Middle East. Tony Blair and the truncated opinion about going to war in 2003. And now we have the same. And at the bottom of the pile, or very important in the whole business, is the Attorney General, Lord Goldsmith, in that on the Tony Blair occasion, and a very close friend and colleague of the Prime Minister, Richard Hermer, the Attorney General. They are joint, hip and thigh, in the belief in lawfare, not warfare. And I was just wondering, with the Prime Minister, I had a rather different view, I think, from you. I was wondering what the girls and boys on the base in Akrotiri, the support at the British base or the joint British base in Qatar, and the people out in the field who have been under fire in Syria since all this began, what they make of their Prime Minister speaking like that. He looked as if he was speaking under duress. He really didn't want to be there. He really didn't want to be saying all these things. And what happens when British interests and bases are attacked. It's not if and when, it's happened.
Yeah. Listen,
and this lawfare, not warfare, I think there's going to be quite a row, and I'm being understating, in Parliament about this. Is this the right way to direct your armed forces in a hot war?
Yeah. Listen, I can understand the difficulty that he's in, but if he doesn't agree with it, if the British government doesn't agree with what the US has done, do what the Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez did and say that he condemns the actions of the US and the Israelis. But of course, he's not going to do that. But you know, saying that you can use our bases and then limiting it to, but it can only be to go after the likes of missile batteries. It can't be as part of decapitation strikes. And yet we can put our combat jets up as well to take down these missiles and drones, but we won't take out the missile batteries in Iran that are firing them in the first place. It's just a mess of legalese. You know, I think you're either in the fight or you're not,
Mark, you've said it beautifully. It's military nonsense. Because when is it offensive? When it's in the tube and aimed at your base or whatever, then it's an offensive action to take it out. When it's on its way and about to hit you, I suppose just about it could be defensive. That's why the Typhoon has shot down a drone headed towards Qatar. I think there has to be real clarification about this. He, I think, is speaking as much to his backbench as he is to the country and to the armed forces.
Is there a way out of this without this going into a full-blown war? Because there's talk of Trump meeting with the remaining regime in Iran. They say they're ready to talk. He says it's too late. Do you think the time for diplomatic process is over?
Well, it's part of the landscape that we need to understand more, how much of the regime
is left,
has broken up. Very interesting. I shouldn't sort of pop at the rival, but the BBC was very adamant that the regime is in place, and it was going on all night about this. And I was talking to people like Professor Ali Ansari, including people in the Foreign Office too, on the background information that's coming. It is very, very uncertain what is happening with the regime, with the economy, with the armed forces, with the Revolutionary Guard. They seem to be far from united. And there are two things going. It does seem that Arashi, the very articulate, British-educated foreign minister, does want talks. Who's behind him is unclear. What is interesting, too, is the GCC, the Gulf Cooperation Council, that their principles, namely Saudi Arabia and UAE, which have been at loggerheads over all kinds of things, Yemen and Sudan particularly, they want to get together with Qatar particularly, Kuwait, Bahrain, and say, we are joining you, America, because we are under threat, we have been attacked. That answers your question, I'm afraid. The war pro tem is widening. But what they're hoping, that's why we're hearing, and you know, we saw the F-15, they're going in to get the missile launchers. They're trying to write down the amount, and the Israelis have, of course, a running score on this. And I was predicting yesterday with you here on GB News that I think that if they go on at this rate, they'll have reached, they'll really be exhausting their drone and ammunition stocks, because they're not making a lot of drones at rapid rate, and the Israelis have been very sharp in targeting manufacture. And above all, they hit the main explosive manufacturing, the huge complex. And that's why I don't think it can go on for too long.
Robert, I want to just get your thoughts very briefly on something else. Just say we're going to cross to very shortly a British national stuck in the region there, as so many thousands of others are. But let me just get your quick thought on this. We now have, it seems, Hezbollah, one of Iran's proxies, entering the war, probably responsible for firing those two drones towards Cyprus, because they would not have come all the way from Iran, flying over multiple territories. They would likely have been intercepted long before they got to Cyprus. They are in the war now, it seems. That is a worrying development, even though they've been obviously significantly degraded by the Israelis ever since October 7th.
Yeah, over to you, Lord Hermer. We're being attacked, but Hezbollah is an added, and as you rightly suggest, unexpected element because they've suffered so badly. And there are lots of Hezbollahs, but the big one, the really important one, is the Lebanese one. And I would have thought they would have conserved their position. They've lost a lot of their armaments. They want to stay in and around government in Lebanon. This is almost a suicide note by getting into the fight now because, particularly with somebody like Trump as opposed to Biden or Obama, Trump, actually, whatever people say, this administration will see this one through.
OK, thanks. We'll get more thoughts from you, obviously, as the programme develops. Robert, thanks.
Well, at 15 minutes past 6, let's speak now to Charles Braunstein. He's a London-based man who went on holiday to Israel with his pregnant wife, and they are now both stuck there. Charles, really thinking about you this morning. How are you both? What is the situation like on the ground?
Thank you. Thank you for having me on. We're fine. We're lucky that Israel has the technology, the communication, and the shelters for us to protect ourselves. There's nervousness. I think we were very lucky. We've got wider family in Israel where we've been able to shelter and be looked after. There's a bit of a mixed feeling, to be honest. I think this has been a long time coming. I think Israelis have been stocking up for a while, and I think they've known it's been coming. So there's probably an element of relief that something's finally happening. But at the same time, you only have to see the scenes in Bet Shemesh and Tel Aviv, where you're seeing the impact of Iranian missiles on Israeli streets and houses, and sadly, people have died. So there's definitely anxiousness, but there's definitely a sense that this is the right thing to do, and there's definitely a gratefulness to the US and obviously with the Israeli forces and what they're doing to try and defeat the Iranian despotic regime.
Charles, can I just ask you, there are many people probably right around the world and in this country as well, as you well know, who probably, don't get what it's like to live in close proximity to Iran, to have suffered, daily attacks, not just from Iran, but its proxies in Lebanon, in Gaza, in Yemen. For Israel, this really is an existential threat that must be dealt with. Isn't that the correct analogy here to bring from this?
Definitely, as in you only have to see the size of a ballistic missile to see the damage that it can cause. And I guess from the 12-day war that took place during, the sort of a year ago, that the threat is very real. And I think if it wasn't for the successful operations in Lebanon with Hezbollah and ultimately even in Gaza as well, that they've taken out some existential threats, the Iranian cloud hangs over Israel, and it's draining, it's tiring. Israelis are definitely war tired. It's been a very traumatic few years, and I definitely think we probably take it for granted in the UK for our security at times, and when you can see a threat to, and ultimately an ally, and to have that constantly hanging over you is very draining. And I think the Israelis definitely, and this comes back to my point before, the Israelis definitely see this as, the problem that the head of the octopus, as it was called, and a problem that really needed a solution. So hopefully there's some hope now that this existential threat is finally coming to an end.
Charles, we're hearing that there are 200,000 Brits in the regions. That includes residents, those on holiday, those in transit. What were your plans in terms of getting back to London, and where do they stand now? Obviously, you must be concerned about your wife who is pregnant.
Yeah, I'm also here with my sister-in-law and brother-in-law. We were actually here to run, when we did run the Tel Aviv marathon, half marathon. So all four of us did an element of the day. But sadly, it's all now up in the air. My wife, we have appointments to hospitals that we want to get back to. There's a worry on that end. We currently don't know our plan. We will try and get back as soon as possible. We have had some contact from the Foreign Office with no solutions, which is probably understandable due to the airspace being closed. But we have our lives that we need to get on with back in the UK with our jobs, etc. But as I said, my wife is pregnant, and we're conscious of that. Luckily, Israel has top quality hospitals that we might have to rely on. But obviously, it's not the same as being back home with our family, and also, I guess, with the appointments that we've got planned. So we're holding tight at the moment, and we're hoping to hear things that we'll be able to find routes out of the country in the not too distant future. But who knows how long this can go on for.
All right, well, good luck to all of you and stay safe. And thank you very much for joining us on GB News Breakfast.
Thanks, Charles. OK, we want to just bring you some more breaking lines. As I say, it's just going to be one of these shows because there's so many lines coming in to us here at GB News. We're told now that the US Embassy in Kuwait has been struck, it seems, by either missile or drones targeting that facility. Smoke is seen rising from the embassy in Kuwait, with local emergency services now on scene, and reports now, warnings really, that the US Embassy in Kuwait, that there is a continuing threat of missile and unmanned aerial vehicle drone attacks over Kuwait itself. The US Embassy is urging people not to come to the embassy and to take cover. It's a similar situation in so many areas now that are in the line of fire of Iran's drones and missiles. Iran says it's targeting all these neighbouring countries because of the fact that they play host to US military bases.
Yeah, reports as well that there is smoke now rising from the US Embassy in Kuwait City. We will try and get some pictures of this for you and share them on GB News Breakfast as soon as we've got them. But for now, let's get a check on the weather with Honor Krisick.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Boxed Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hello there, good morning. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. As we head into a new week, we have high pressure building. We'll see a mix of cloud and also some sunshine, but where we do see any sunny spells, it's certainly going to be feeling a bit more like spring. Now for today, unfortunately, there is still some rain in the forecast. Quite a wet day on offer across parts of Scotland, northwest England, also parts of Wales and eventually southwest England. But to the south of any of this rain, lots of clear skies, so actually lots of sunshine around and lots of dry weather too. Some brighter spells too across northwest Scotland and Northern Ireland, though it's likely we'll start to see some showers into the afternoon. But as I say, where we do see any sunshine, some quite mild temperatures for the time of year, highs reaching around 15 degrees Celsius, so feeling a bit more like spring, particularly if you compare it to the weather we had yesterday. Now there will still be some cloud lingering on through this evening. This is still thick enough to produce some light outbreaks of rain and drizzle, particularly across any hills of Wales or northern areas of England. Just a few showers starting to push into the west of Northern Ireland, also northwest Scotland. But otherwise, Scotland should see plenty of clear skies as we progress through into this evening. Any showers largely easing away. This is fairly similar across Northern Ireland too. And with those clear skies, that means temperatures will soon dip away here, and it's likely we'll see quite a patchy frost across Scotland and Northern Ireland. But anywhere to the south of this, we've still got plenty of cloudy skies, so that's going to hold up temperatures a little bit more. So more towards the mid-single figures across much of England and Wales, but across Scotland, Northern Ireland, northern parts of England, a much chillier start as we head our way into Tuesday. Now, through Tuesday, it's really when we start to see that high pressure building. So any cloud largely fizzling away. It might just linger for a time across southeast England, parts of the south as well. And this at times will produce some drizzle. But for most of the country, there'll be lots of dry weather around and lots of sunshine. Still that little bit cooler across northern areas, but where the cloud breaks up in the south, still feeling pleasant for the time of year. Bye-bye.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Boxed Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Now, do stay with us. Still to come on GB News Breakfast. The Home Secretary has spoken to GB News political editor Christopher Hope. Here's a taste of what she had to say.
And would you live next door to Krober, or next door to a migrant camp?
Well, look, I mean, I'm in a constituency that's had asylum hotels as well.
Happy, would you, with your children?
Look, I do understand, but look, we've got to put people somewhere.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions, but every Friday night at 9 p.m. you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christie's Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Do you trust what you're being told? Good, because neither do I.
Those are just facts.
I'm Alex Armstrong, and on my show, we'll expose the spin.
Well, I want to answer that, because you didn't let me last time, because you always speak over me.
The broken promises.
To deny that is denying the truth.
And the hypocrisy.
Needs to stop. You think we can allow?
Politics, policy, parliament. Nothing is off limits. No sugarcoating, no fear of offence, just the truth laid bare. Tune in every Saturday and Sunday at 9 p.m. for Alex Armstrong Tonight, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
No matter the state it's in, this is our nation. Join me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, for a genuine, honest discussion on where we have been, where we are going, and where we are with the people who set the direction. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock, only on GB News.
Welcome back to Breakfast. It's 6:28. Now, the Home Secretary has defended the government's plans to close all hotels housing asylum seekers by moving them to military bases.
Yes, several communities across the UK with nearby sites have taken to the streets in recent months to protest, claiming they feel threatened.
But Shabana Mahmood says although she understands, she would be happy to live close by.
Well, GB News political editor Christopher Hope spoke with the Home Secretary out in Denmark.
Denmark's asylum system has cut claims to a 40-year low, and the UK government wants to find out what lessons they can learn. Yes. We went with Shabana Mahmood, the Home Secretary, to Copenhagen to visit an arrival centre and a deportation centre. Later, she went to see an asylum appeals court. Ms Mahmood saw the whole process in one day.
She wants to see how a left-wing government can tackle migration and make it work for people by removing the right to work, have a temporary reason to remain, remove the merry-go-round of appeals through the courts. A single appeal system works in Denmark. Can that be applied to the UK? And also, when a country becomes safe, people are removed here and go back from where they came. That's the idea that Shabana Mahmood wants to pick up from Denmark and see if it will work in the UK. The question is, will the left of her party accept that?
If you have
an openness to the world and to migration in a way where you don't put any bonds on people that aren't able to contribute positively to this welfare model, then you will see your welfare model deteriorate and you will let down the people that you actually represent in government.
Tackling illegal migration remains a tough and difficult priority for the Labour government and also for the party's natural supporter base. But Ms Mahmood is determined to take action. From today, asylum cases will be reviewed every 30 months, not every 5 years. The hope is that more migrants will be deported.
There's no one silver bullet. I wish there was. Honestly, if I could just do one thing and it would solve it all, I would have done it. I would just say, beware people who come along and say, I can just do this one thing and it will be done, because it's not true. If it was, the Tories would have done it or we would have done it and it would have been sorted.
That approach,
but we can fix this.
Time will tell if she can. Christopher Hope, GB News in Copenhagen, Denmark.
Well, let's get the thoughts now of former political advisor Lauren McKevitt. Good morning to you, Lauren.
Good morning.
Yeah, so listen, you know, Shabana Mahmood, she's out in Denmark, she's trying to get lessons learned from the Danes and how they've been tackling the crisis. But really what she's up against here is convincing many in her own party that that tougher approach is the way to go.
I think it's very smart of her to go to Denmark. I think, you know, I've said on this program many times before, I think that Shabana Mahmood is probably one of the more right-wing Home Secretaries we've had in the last 20 years. Denmark has seen a massive reduction over the course of the last 3 years or so. And one of the things that they've done, of course, is beginning a process whereby they mark countries as safe when they begin to alter their direction of travel, and then they start encouraging people to go home now that their countries of origin have become safe. They have started this, I think, with Syria, if I'm remembering correctly. Shabana Mahmood and the Labour Party have a problem in both directions now. The by-election last week showed us that they're losing votes to Reform and they're losing votes to a much harder left Green flank that looks very much like it is now coalescing around a party. The previous concern for them was, of course, that they would lose votes to the Green Party. They would also potentially lose votes to more Islamic independent parties, the way that they have done in those 4 or 5 seats at the last general election. If that vote is beginning to coalesce around the Green Party, then the Labour Party have a very big electoral problem coming up. But they are also losing votes to Reform, and they're losing votes to Reform in their heartland, as we saw in Gorton and Denton last week. So the Labour Party in government have a very difficult path to tread here, between needing to tack right and deal with a very large migration problem within the United Kingdom. That's what today's announcements are for. And that's not just what was in Chris Hope's interview with her yesterday or this morning, whenever it was recorded. That's also in relation to the proposals to double the length of time before indefinite leave to remain before you can qualify for that. That obviously a really big step to take, because that big Boris wave that started to arrive in September 2021, that's going to come up to the 5-year mark in September this year. And the Labour Party and government are conscious of that. But what she said in the interview with Chris is really important. If this was a simple solution, then the Tories in government, my party, would have been able to deal with this. This is not an easy solution. But like she's saying about the migrant camps, I do think that putting people into barracks, if those barracks are secure, is probably a better option for local communities than having them in hotels where they are not secure.
And just very briefly, Lauren, because we are out of time with you, but I just wanted to get your reaction to her admission that she would be happy to live near a military base housing asylum seekers. I mean, she can't really say anything else, can she, when she expects people in Crowborough to live nearby to these military bases?
That's exactly right. She can't say anything else. But one of the things that did come out over the course of the last week was that LGBTQ plus migrants were not going to be housed in hotels or were moved somewhere safer. Now, if that is the case, then why is it that people, you know, just normal citizens of the United Kingdom should be living next to places housing migrants on this level if security concerns do exist about particular communities?
Good point. Lauren McKevitt, thank you very much.
Thank you, Lauren. Really appreciate your thoughts.
My pleasure.
Now, as Donald Trump arrives back in Washington, what might his next move be with regard to Iran? We're getting details on that live from Washington next.
But first, if you're travelling to work or school this morning, here is your traffic and travel update.
Good morning. This is the latest AI travel news from gbnews.com. Strong high winds are currently creating tricky driving conditions on the A87 Skye Bridge, so motorists should ensure they take extra care on exposed sections. Additionally, high winds are affecting traffic on the A55 Britannia Bridge, with conditions anticipated to remain challenging until further notice. In the West Midlands, an abandoned vehicle is causing disruption on the M5 southbound between Junction 3 and Junction 4, leading to the closure of one of 3 lanes. Traffic is expected to return to normal flow between 7:15 and 7:30 this morning. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, this is Jubes & Co with you.
Hello everyone, Patrick Christie is here. It's GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Access the stories that matter to you. Take the GB News family with you on any device, and as long as you have an internet connection. Tune in to GB News anywhere on the planet or beyond. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
So he can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk then?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
The fact that Trump made a good start, no.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up?
About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Decisions made in Washington aren't just shaping America, they're shaping Britain too. From migration to global security, from crime to health. Whatever happens in the White House today
will be felt in your town or city tomorrow.
That's why The Late Show is live from Washington, D.C.
Cutting through the politics to show you what it all means for Britain.
The Late Show live every night at midnight.
Only on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Bold. They are under no illusion. Ray. Are you a human trafficker? Boundless. I've had enough of the nonsense, and I'm not afraid to say it. Don't get this on the BBC. Every weeknight, I tear through the headlines.
The smell of gasoline.
Should we be worried about it? From Westminster madness to cultural war chaos.
What we're going to do now, they are throwing things out the car as we speak.
Get ready, Britain. Here we go. Patrick Christie tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Well, welcome back to GB News Breakfast. We are rolling today with continuing coverage of the situation in the Middle East, with fresh waves of attacks against Iran and retaliatory strikes coming back the other way. We want to tell you about a very concerning incident, though, that happened overnight, late last night, targeting the RAF base, the British base on Cyprus, RAF Akrotiri. We've had confirmation now from sources that this was a drone attack, not just one drone, but 2 drones. One of those drones made it to RAF Akrotiri, impacted the base, caused minimum damage from what we're hearing and no injuries. However, understandably, authorities at RAF Akrotiri have now ordered the evacuation of all non-essential personnel as they hunker down for a period of knowing that potentially they're going to be targeted, and it's likely that those drones will not have come all the way from Iran. They probably came from Lebanon, where Hezbollah, that proxy group, that terrorist group aligned to Iran, has now, it seems, entered the war as well. A very worrying development in terms of Hezbollah involvement. Israel has been throughout the evening and into the morning bombing targets linked to Hezbollah in southern Lebanon.
Yeah, we've just had a statement from the Sovereign Base Areas Administration. They say the dispersal of non-essential personnel from the RAF base in Cyprus was a precautionary measure. They say they understand in the wider British bases community that people are concerned, and many residents have decided to leave the village at Akrotiri. Whilst we appreciate that people may be worried, we do not believe this is necessary. This is a temporary dispersal, and it only applies to the RAF base. They say other facilities on the island would operate as normal, but yet people living in the village have been advised to shelter in place.
So as you're looking there at live images of Jerusalem, what is very clear now is that Iran is not just targeting its old foe, Israel, in Tel Aviv, in Jerusalem, up in the northern port of Haifa, all these locations that are so well used to being battered by Iranian missiles and drones. They have widened out this conflict to go after what they say are countries in the region that are harbouring and hosting the likes of US and coalition military facilities. And to that end, more breaking news that we can share with you. 3 armed drones have been shot down over Erbil in northern Iraqi Kurdistan, where US forces are stationed. That according to security sources there. And also very concerning news about the US Embassy in Kuwait, which has apparently been struck as well by either missile or drones launched from Iran this morning. Smoke seen billowing from the embassy staff urging people not to go to the US Embassy in Kuwait, but to shelter in place.
Yeah, we've also had a statement from the EU's Ursula von der Leyen in the past few minutes saying we stand collectively, firmly and unequivocally with our member states in the face of any threat. So that reaction from Ursula von der Leyen in the past few minutes. We've got Dawn Neeson here with us in the studio. Dawn, what's your reaction to what we've seen overnight in Cyprus and the RAF base Akrotiri being hit by a drone strike?
Good morning, Dawn. You've had a busy weekend.
Yeah, we have, haven't we? But it's what we do. We cover live breaking news. And even when the news is as worrying as this, it's developing, as you say, every single minute. You can't take your eyes off the news that's coming into the newsroom. The RAF base being attacked, as you just said, probably by Hezbollah in Lebanon, because they wouldn't have... Any drones fired from Iran would have probably been shot down before they got there. Incredibly worrying. It's home to 2,000 service personnel and their families, obviously. It's an incredibly strategic base for the UK. So it is worrying. That is the UK being under attack. That is our base under attack, whether it's Hezbollah or the Iranians themselves. I mean, Hezbollah are, as we know, a proxy of Iran.
To that end, Dawn, I just want to share some more breaking news, and we're trying to get these images cut, and as soon as they are available, we'll bring them to you. But another British facility appears to have been struck this morning, this time in Bahrain. Remember over the weekend, because you were reporting on it, we had the headquarters of the US 5th Fleet in Bahrain struck by missiles and drones. Again this morning, there have been more strikes on that facility with very heavy plumes of smoke over the facility in Bahrain. So as soon as we get these images, we will bring them to you. And the worrying thing about that, Dawn, is that the United Kingdom Defence Secretary John Healey said that on the strikes on Saturday landed just within metres of where 300 British personnel were stationed. Luckily, no one injured in those strikes, but some real concern.
But it was luck, Mark. It was luck that that didn't happen. It was luck that so far no Brits have been killed. We know, sadly, 3 US service members were killed in fighting overnight. Donald Trump spoke about it, saying that, you know, sad, expected it to happen. It could happen again. The thing is, we are under attack now. The UK is under attack. Whether we like it or not, whether our Prime Minister likes it or not, we have been dragged into this. And obviously, we know the Prime Minister gave a speech last night, and I still have no idea what he thinks.
Yeah.
The language was very, we are involved in a defensive capability.
Very cautious.
It was like written by a lawyer. I know he is a lawyer, but he's also Prime Minister. He's also the leader of our country. And I'm still, you know, we have Brits out there, we have British families in Cyprus worried.
Right. You're looking there at shots of Lebanon. They are now, sadly for the peaceful population, the majority population in Lebanon, they are now in the fight because of this terrorist proxy group further south who've decided to join the operations with Iran and to target obviously RAF Akrotiri and indeed targets in Israel as well. I was telling you just a short time ago about the headquarters of the US 5th Fleet in Bahrain. We can share with you now those very concerning images that have just come through this morning that shows smoke billowing from the site in Bahrain. Do we have the Bahrain images, guys, with the smoke? There you go there. So you look at that, look at those images. I mean, that is very concerning. That's actually over quite a wide area. That plume of smoke is now sort of affecting nearby roads. So it's coming under repeated attack from Iran. This is the third day in a row that the facility at Bahrain has been targeted and attacked successfully, it seems, by the Iranians. And the concerning thing about that, Dawn, is just like RAF Akrotiri, there are these military personnel there. I guess, you know, in terms of this being widened out by Iran, it clearly sees this as, one, a bit of an act of revenge for those countries that are playing host to US military facilities, but also they want to press these countries to go to Donald Trump and say, end the war now.
So far, 11 countries have been targeted by Iran or by their proxies. You know, all the Gulf states, and obviously, you know, we know Dubai, where there's, as you said, many Brits, expats live there and are on holiday. This could either go one way or the other, couldn't it, Mark? I mean, by attacking these countries, it could either force them to go to Donald Trump and Israel and go, please stop this now, or it could force them to fight back against Iran themselves as well.
Well, it certainly stiffened the resolve of the Saudis, who are talking about potentially carrying out offensive action against Iran. But, you know, some of the other states, Qatar, for instance, where, you know, there have been warmer relations with Iran. Who knows? I'm sure there is pressing behind the scenes of the US administration to, you know, try and expedite this campaign and get it over and done with as soon as possible.
And just to give you a sense of this widening, the IDF released a statement in the past half an hour or so saying we have launched an offensive campaign against Hezbollah. This is following the attack from Lebanon into northern Israel yesterday. We are not only operating defensively, we're now going on the offensive as well. We must prepare for many prolonged days of combat ahead. That's from the IDF in the last half an hour.
OK, still to come. Well, Dawn is staying right here. We're not letting her go anywhere. And the former chairman of the Defence Select Committee, Tobias Ellwood, will be joining us too.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Patrick Christie's Tonight, weekdays from 9 p.m.
Right. So that's that then. Aliens are real.
Terrible interview of that.
it was like he said, yes, aliens are real, and then he just sort of moved on. I was like, well, that's drilled out. What do you mean they're real?
That's the big news.
That's the story there, lad.
It's arguably the story
of the century. I mean, I couldn't give a toss about local elections if aliens are real. This is hugely exciting. Maybe they're in the Epstein files. Who knows?
Yeah. Wow.
This is wonderful news. But has no one followed up with Barat?
Well, he did. He went on Instagram to clarify, and he said he was just sticking with the spirit of the interview, but the universe is so vast, he says, that the odds are good that there's life out there.
That's not what he said in the
interview. Distances between our solar systems are so great that the chances we've been visited by aliens is low. So it's a U-turn from Barack Obama on aliens.
We'll know what he really said.
People who've come from completely different planets must exist. Otherwise, how would we account for your opinions?
I just think that's quite a big deal.
It was a huge deal, but no, it's just backtracked.
Have you ever read the work of a guy called David Jacobs? He believes that the aliens... Oh, no, that's David Jason.
Right, sorry.
And it's not David Jacobs, the guy who created Dallas in 1978 when he tried to sell it to CBS. No, that's a different David Jacobs. David Jacobs wrote a book about how there are aliens already in this on this Earth, and they are either, I think they're called there are the blondes, there are the sort of reptilians, there are all these people, and they are here already in human form. People who have been abducted by aliens have genuinely been abducted by aliens.
So this is
the number of people... I'm not saying I believe him, I'm just reporting to you what he said. And the number of people who've been abducted by aliens, there are so many who have exactly the same story.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Breakfast. We are joined by Dawn Neeson and Robert Fox for this little segment here. Just want to bring you this line from AP in the past few moments, that fire and smoke have been seen inside the US Embassy compound in Kuwait after an attack by Iran. I think we've got some pictures that we can show you. We've got the Kuwait pictures, smoke billowing above this US Embassy, but reporters on the ground there saying that is seen inside the building. Also been hearing from Ursula von der Leyen, that's the EU's Ursula von der Leyen, reacting to RAF base Akrotiri being hit by a drone strike overnight. Now, there was some school of thought, wasn't there, Mark, that wasn't actually targeting the base, that it may have been targeting the US carrier groups that are based in the Mediterranean just south of Cyprus. That has been debunked, it's fair to say, in the past hour or so.
These were strikes on the RAF base at Akrotiri, and not just one drone, but two drones. So I don't know what Ursula von der Leyen is talking about, unless she means the wider Republic of Cyprus. But that doesn't make any odds, you know. The island has been struck by drones that have been launched, it seems, by this proxy group Hezbollah in southern Lebanon. So, you know, they have been targeted. A member state of the EU has been targeted. Robert, the information we've got is that these drones have specifically been targeting Akrotiri.
Yes, I think it's extremely unlikely that they were targeting the carrier, the Gerald R. Ford group.
They would have been many, many miles away from Cyprus.
By the way, yeah, as you and I know well, Hezbollah is an extremely sophisticated military group. It's about the best-armed, non-state military group, although it has a participation, it has had in the past politically, in the state of Lebanon. I think we're getting tangled up in legalistic talk. We've heard that Germany, along with France, has called in for Britain, let's take joint action in regard to what the US is doing. with a proportionate defensive posture. This is what Merz was translated as saying. What on earth does that mean in these circumstances? And this is the thing, is that wars are not run by law, and I think this is the difficulty that Keir Starmer and Richard Hermer, the Attorney General, are finding it difficult to come to grips with.
And Dawn, we heard that from the Prime Minister last night in that statement. Specific, limited defensive action he's talking about. How do you think that makes the boys and girls feel on our military bases in the Middle East right now?
Someone should unplug Keir Starmer at this point, to be honest with you. He's like a robot that's gone horribly wrong, isn't he? I mean, I actually have no idea what he's saying about anything. It's just words. It doesn't mean anything. If I had loved ones in Cyprus or loved ones in the Gulf states at the moment, on holiday in Dubai, or, heaven forbid, loved ones and family and friends in Lebanon, in Iran itself, I'd be worried sick. And all I'm getting from our Prime Minister, our leader, is, well, we have a helpline, you can phone 24/7. He actually said that. It's like, not a call centre, you're the Prime Minister. He actually said that on Saturday. And it's like there's no real guidance. Look, I understand the point that he doesn't want to drag the UK into another, what he possibly sees as an illegal war.
But we're involved now, aren't we?
But we are involved whether we like it or not. I mean,
hit.
as you've just read out, as Mark's just commented, it's the EU saying, no, Cyprus hasn't been targeted. Yes, it has. That's a British base. There are British families living there.
And a British fighter has shot down a drone approaching Qatar, where we have a joint interest. We have an alliance, but we have a joint interest with the American allies who are based there. I'm sorry, these are the realities of war. Specific defence requirement. That is a lawyer speaking, absolutely outside the realities of war, which is messy, terrible, and very, very unpredictable. Yes. And you've got to really show the people that you command, which I think this government finds very difficult, you've got their back.
How many lawyers have won wars, Robert? I mean, it just doesn't happen.
OK, I just want to bring you one more line of breaking news with regard to what happened in Bahrain. I don't know if we've got that video handy that we can bring back up with the smoke billowing from the port area in Bahrain, the headquarters of the US Navy 5th Fleet, struck again, it seems, by missile and drone attack. The latest we're getting is that one person has been killed in that attack in Bahrain this morning. We're going to keep you right up to date with all the latest breaking news on this fast developing situation. We'll be with you again at the top of the hour.
Thank you for making us Britain's #1 news channel. Together, we have built something truly extraordinary.
Good morning. This is the latest AI travel news from gbnews.com. Take care on the A87 Skye Bridge, where high winds are making driving tricky. And there are also strong gusts on the A55 Britannia Bridge until further notice. On Northamptonshire's M62 eastbound, a broken down vehicle is closing one of 3 lanes between junction 19 and junction 20. On the M5 southbound, an abandoned vehicle has shut one of 3 lanes between junction 3 and junction 4. And on the trains, ScotRail is reporting disruption between Gourock or Wemyss Bay and Glasgow Central. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
You could be the proud owner of a brand new Benivan 122. This very latest 2026 model comfortably sleeps 4, comes complete with built-in kitchen, compact washroom, and is worth over £67,000. But that's not all, as we'll also give you a further £25,000 in tax-free cash to spend on anything you like in the coming year. For a chance to win a camper van and cash, text prize to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus 1 standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus 1 standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entry starts at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB20 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 1st of May. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
No matter the state it's in, this is our nation. Join me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, for a genuine, honest discussion on where we have been, where we are going, and where we are with the people who set the direction. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock, only on GB News.
Britain deserves a newsroom that puts the facts and your voice first.
Well, and that's what you get on GB News. Lively debates, lively conversation.
And we're not afraid to hold power to account.
And each other. So join me, Andrew Pierce.
And me, Miriam Gates, for Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 on GB News.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Good morning. Breaking news as the Prime Minister is criticised for his response to Iran.
Well, it comes as Sir Keir Starmer confirmed that the US can use UK bases to strike Iran, but stopped short of backing the war.
The United States has requested permission to use British bases. We have taken the decision to accept this request.
It's after sources confirm the British RAF base in Cyprus was targeted by 2 drones. It's only a matter of time now until the UK gets directly involved.
Well, Donald Trump has returned to the White House as he warns Americans more US personnel could lose their lives.
Combat operations continue at this time in full force, and they will continue until all of our objectives are achieved.
Elsewhere today, the Home Secretary exclusively tells GB News that she would be willing to live next to a migrant camp. Here's a sneak peek.
And would you live next door to Krober or next door to a migrant camp?
Well, look, I mean, I'm in a constituency that's had asylum hotels as well.
Happy, would you, with your children?
Look, I do understand, but look, we've got to put people somewhere.
And Reform's Treasury spokesman Robert Jenrick says he'll reveal shocking information about the Chancellor at 8:30 this morning. Stay tuned for the latest.
Hello there, good morning. It's the first week of meteorological spring. For some, that means sunshine. For others, it's quite a wet day in store. Stay tuned and I'll have all the details.
Good morning. It's just gone 7 o'clock. I'm Ellie Costello.
And I'm Mark White. And this is GB News Breakfast.
And breaking news this hour, we're going to start in Bahrain, aren't we, Mark?
Yes, absolutely. Listen, this is a fast-moving programme this morning. We've effectively thrown out the running order, so we were just going with news as it comes through and speaking to our various guests. But some very concerning news coming through from Bahrain. Of course, the facility in Bahrain, the US Naval 5th Fleet headquarters. In addition to that, a Royal Naval base shares that facility with 300 military personnel from Britain stationed there. For the 3rd day running, they have been struck by missiles and drones from Iran. Big plumes of smoke. I think we can show you the images billowing over the port area in Bahrain at the moment. And the concerning news coming through, confirmation that one person has been killed in those latest strikes from Iran into Bahrain. We're joined by our guest, Tobias Ellwood, former chair of the Defence Select Committee, and of course, Robert Fox, Defence Editor at the Evening Standard. Tobias, I wanted to ask you first of all about Bahrain. Real concern there, given that we have hundreds of personnel right in harm's way.
Yes, we see this conflict developing between Israel predominantly and the American fleet, those assets that have been building up over the months that we've seen, and of course Iran. And when you look on the map, they are a long distance away. Sitting in between that are other countries, and right across the Straits of Hormuz are these other Gulf nations that we now see as quite advanced, as places to go to do business and so on, and they are now being attacked. And as you touched on, America has a lot of military assets, as does Britain as well. That 5th Fleet we're speaking about, HMS Jafir, is one of our overseas bases. They're an important one that many parliamentarians would have visited during a visit to the Gulf. And it's far easier for Iran to attack those bases, those American assets, rather than actually trying to hit Israel or indeed the American fleet, because they don't have the Patriot systems on the scale that, of course, Israel has, its Iron Dome and so forth. So this is where America, Donald Trump, warned that there could be American lives at risk, knowing full well that this is what Iran would go for.
What do you think is the thinking of the regime here? Is it about, you know, hitting out, lashing out at those that are providing and playing host to US and allied militaries there, or is it about applying pressure to those states in the hope that they'll in turn apply pressure to Donald Trump?
I think it's a mixture of that. It's also simply just to escalate. The regime has very little to lose now. It knows it's on the back foot. It's lost its supreme leader. Where does it go next? And the best way to actually get the world's attention to say, Donald Trump, this is too much, is by actually setting the entire Middle East on fire. And that's exactly what he's trying to do. Quite right then, I think we'll probably lead into this later, why Britain should now step off the fence and start participating in protecting its assets and its friends in the Middle East.
Is now the time for Britain to get off the fence, Robert? Let's stay with Bahrain, because we did hear from the Defence Secretary John Healey yesterday, didn't we, saying that hundreds of our British personnel came within just metres of these strikes on Saturday.
Not only in Bahrain, Qatar, and in the desert in Syria, where we've got several handfuls, but they're very important with their American colleagues. They've been targeted as well. And now we have Cyprus. I think, what was the image I was trying to conjure up looking at Starmer last night and just looking at him again? Old-fashioned motoring. He's driving with one foot on the accelerator and one foot very firmly on the brake. This does not work because people who are on the Iran watch in government and people like Ali Ansari, the Anglo-Iranian professor in St Andrews, they're really concerned about how scattergun the whole thing is. Probably that's an awful expression to use. But the targeting, the initial targeting in response was all over the place. Why were they hitting Oman? Why were they lashing out? Why have we seen at least 2 drones launched in the Akrotiri area in Cyprus? Yes, it is scattered, but there is a sort of weird, desperate coherence in it. Why you go down the Gulf is, of course, you launch the heavy aircraft from there, like the F-15, which we saw shot down, because they can carry a bigger payload. Why Cyprus? Why Bahrain? Because they're listening stations as well. They do know that the big radars are there, and Britain is involved. We're absolutely, in all kinds of surveillance and intelligence gathering, we're deeply enmeshed with the Americans, and everybody knows that. And it seems that that's the thing that Downing Street publicly is in denial about.
Tobias, in terms of this, sitting on the fence approach by Sir Keir Starmer, tying himself in knots, telling us at every opportunity, starting every statement that he's been making over the weekend with we're not involved in any of the action here, our posture is purely defensive. But Iran doesn't draw that distinction. If you're in the air, over the Middle East, shooting down their drones and missiles, you're in the fight.
Yeah, I mean, a line has been crossed, and that's where things changed. And as soon as that happened, that's where Downing Street should have changed its language. I'm actually with the concern of where this goes. I'm asked that question, what does victory look like? That's what every military leader wants to know. I'm putting my men and women in danger. Where is this leading to? Are we going to see victory? And, of course, we're haunted by what happened in Iraq, Afghanistan and so forth. So, quite rightly, we ask these questions. Donald Trump doesn't do things in the normal order. But as soon as you've crossed that line, then we need to see the statecraft that says we're under threat, we need to participate, we need to protect our interests and protect our allies.
But there's a real danger, isn't there, though, in not doing anything and allowing this to drag on in that sense. If we're involved, perhaps we should just get this ended as soon as possible, because the longer it drags on, the more of these states will continue to be targeted, and the more likelihood that more people will be killed and injured.
You're absolutely right. However, America decided to go alone. Normally when we do this, the Gulf War was the best example, 1991, of where we worked together, prepared, and were one coalition. We weren't participating in this. We didn't even know about this until it actually started to happen. That, for me, is actually not good in one sense, because I like to see Canada, Australia, Britain, United States on the same page. When we're not, it actually helps our adversaries. But we now crossed that line, as you imply, and now we should be working together to defeat this Iranian regime from a military perspective, and then persuade Donald Trump to hang about and look at what happens next, because that's the big question. This is a generational opportunity for Iran to begin afresh. Are we going to take that opportunity and move it in the right direction, or are we going to stand back and allow the military probably to take over from this regime and end up with a terrible civil war?
Robert, what next for Iran? We've got a supreme leader dead, we've got key officials dead. What is the military aim moving forward?
It's who's in charge of the military. This is the risk for Iran. Gosh, and I shouldn't be arguing or speaking up for them. Do they have a coherent military? This is the thing. Or are bits and pieces who've all not entirely been friends, the different elements of the Revolutionary Guard Corps, do they hang together and do they work out a coherent strategy? I think there was just one thing that was floating past across my mind, which is so important. I agree with Tobias. There is not, in the NATO sense, a coherent plan as far as we can see it from America, which is surprising. The coherence is entirely with Israel. Yeah. Israel has wanted to do this and has felt genuinely under threat from the advanced missile and drone capability of particularly Iran, also to an extent its proxies like Hezbollah, which are rearming, and they saw the opportunity. They knew from their intelligence, which was superb, their penetration of the mobile phone system. They knew where that meeting was happening. Yeah. They knew from the 12-day bombing war of last year that they had to do this. They had to take out this very serious threat from about 3,000 missiles and heavy attack drones.
We're now looking at live images of Doha in Qatar, which again this morning has come under attack. So many of these Gulf states, other countries in the Middle East, including Iraq, of course, home to that US base up in Iraqi Kurdistan that has come under attack this morning. We should say, again, very worrying reports coming through from Kuwait that the US Embassy in Kuwait is on fire. US Embassy staff telling people to hunker down, stay away from the embassy as they are still at risk of further missile and drone strikes coming in. Tobias, I mean, in terms of the RAF Akrotiri situation, clearly not just one, but now confirmation of 2 drones that targeted that base on Cyprus. We're absolutely dragged into this. Yeah. Ursula von der Leyen this morning saying that it's clear that the Republic of Cyprus has not been targeted. Did she mean the wider island and just the base? Because as far as we know, this wasn't an attack aimed at the US fleet in the Mediterranean there, but was aimed at Cyprus.
It wouldn't have been aimed at Cyprus as a country itself. They're fairly quiet when it comes to these political issues, but there are 2 very large sovereign bases and smaller assets there. I was based there in my military career. RAF Akrotiri is substantial. It very much is. So this was very much to try and elevate and indeed to escalate. So we now have skin in the game. It's for another conversation, and I'm sure we'll come back to it, but it's a reminder as to why we've not spent enough money on our defences, because there is no proper air defences. There are no Patriot systems on the island of any substantial level. And we're now realising, actually, conventional warfare counts. These big platforms are important, and we've not invested enough money in those. But that is for another day.
Well, very briefly, let's touch on it, because, I mean, it's a pet peeve of mine. I really am concerned about this as well. We've had this very concerning nonsense, quite frankly, over recent days about the Leonardo contract, the helicopter manufacturer, the only military helicopter manufacturer left in this country, awaiting a £1 billion contract to build the new fleet of medium-lift helicopters. Delayed and delayed, it seems, by Rachel Reeves in our department. With the farcical situation of the Defence Secretary about to head down there to make the announcement and then pulled at the last minute.
And it shows...
What is this government doing at saying that we recognise the international situation has changed, we're ploughing much more money into our defences, and at the same time, actually, they're doing the opposite.
It shows that they're the disjoint between the Treasury, the MOD and indeed Whitehall as well. I thought the penny had dropped when we heard Keir Starmer at the Munich Security Conference saying, I'm going to increase defence spending, I'm going to get this right. There's something called the Defence Investment Plan, which is a long set of words for what Britain is going to do to spend the money in recommendations from the Defence Review that took place last year with General Richard Barrons, Fiona Hill and so forth. An incredible report saying we are woefully unprepared. We are vulnerable. We need to spend now. And the thing that hasn't dropped, which I don't understand from the Treasury, is this symbiotic link between our economy and our security. If our economy is damaged because of grey zone warfare, for example, all government departments won't have any money because prosperity is then hit. So investing in our defence is so important. That's what needs to happen now.
Just want to bring you in some lines that we've just got. One from the IDF saying the Israeli Air Force has continued strikes across Iran. We've got some footage of that one, which we're going to try and get for you. An Israeli source has told a Saudi channel this morning that no Hezbollah politician or military figure has immunity, not even its supporters. The source added that the operation in Lebanon will be extensive and could include an invasion. What do you make of that, Robert?
Interestingly, on that, and we can show you the live shots of Lebanon again, you've got the legitimate civilian government in Lebanon in a very difficult situation. They're saying that they are going to hold Hezbollah to account as well, and to an extent go after Hezbollah. We'll see if that happens. But of course, every time that happens, every time that Hezbollah decide to launch attacks on Israel or the wider region, it's the poor, long-suffering people of Lebanon and its civilian government that suffer.
Yes, indeed. I think we're going to see another Israeli incursion, probably going up to the Litani River again. The latest deal, of course, as you may remember, post-October the 7th, over 2 years ago, that the Lebanese army was going to disarm Hezbollah. Has that happened? Later in the programme, I'd like to take up the points that Tobias has raised about defence.
Yes, we'll get into that later, absolutely.
Defense, because it is a message very, very firmly for this country. Sorry to trade it. I've written in both the I and the Independent.
Missile defence. I'm not even sure that RAF Akrotiri has missile defence.
I think it may have one Sky Sabre outfit, which is very, very minimal.
I think they rely on the fighters going up to protect them most of the time.
Well, it just illustrates just how behind we are in where warfare is going. And I understand that Ukrainians are now going to the Middle East to actually advise on the Shahad drones, for example. And this is worth pointing out, that all these attacks that are taking place across the Gulf are not ballistic missiles. These are the Shahid drones, which fly much slower. But if you're going to use Patriots, very, very expensive. I'm afraid those they're going to be focusing on the ballistic missiles, the real killers. And I'm afraid the drones will be then allowed to go through, if you like, because you wouldn't want to actually waste them. And that, of course, is tough on Kuwait, tough on Bahrain, and tough on these other countries, UAE as well.
Gentlemen, we will have to leave it there, I'm afraid. But thank you, Tobias Elwood and Robert Fox. You're going to be with us throughout the programme for more analysis and reaction to this breaking and developing news. Thank you very much.
Now, the Home Secretary has defended the government's plans to close all hotels housing asylum seekers by moving them to military bases.
Yes, several communities across the UK with nearby sites have taken to the streets in recent weeks to protest. They claim they feel threatened.
But Shabana Mahmood says, although she understands, she'd be happy to live close by.
Well, GB News political editor Christopher Hope spoke with the Home Secretary in Denmark.
Denmark's asylum system has cut claims to a 40-year low, and the UK government wants to find out what lessons they can learn. We went with Shabana Mahmood, the Home Secretary, to Copenhagen to visit an arrival centre and a deportation centre. Later, she went to see an asylum appeals court. Ms Mahmood saw the whole process in one day.
She wants to see how a left-wing government can tackle migration and make it work for people by removing the right to work, have a temporary reason to remain, remove the merry-go-round of appeals through the courts. A single appeal system works in Denmark. Can that be applied to the UK? And also, when a country becomes safe, people are removed here and go back from where they came. That's the idea that Shabana Mahmood wants to pick up from Denmark and see if it will work in the UK. The question is, will the left of her party accept that?
If you have an openness to the world and to migration in a way where you don't put any bonds on people that aren't able to contribute positively to this welfare model, then you will see your welfare model deteriorate and you will let down the people that you actually represent in government.
Tackling illegal migration remains a tough and difficult priority for the Labour government and also for the party's natural supporter base. But Ms Mahmood is determined to take action. From today, asylum cases will be reviewed every 30 months, not every 5 years. The hope is that more migrants will be deported.
There's no one silver bullet. I wish there was. Honestly, if I could just do one thing and it would solve it all, I would have done it. I would just say, beware people who come along and say, I can just do this one thing and it will be done, because it's not true. If it was, the Tories would have done it or we would have done it and it would have been sorted.
That approach is...
But we can fix this.
Time will tell if she can. Christopher Hope, GB News in Copenhagen, Denmark.
OK, let's get a check on the weather at 7:20 with Honor Krizik.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Boxed Boiler sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hello there, good morning. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. As we head into a new week, we have high pressure building. We'll see a mix of cloud and also some sunshine, but where we do see any sunny spells, it's certainly going to be feeling a bit more like spring. Now for today, unfortunately, there is still some rain in the forecast. Quite a wet day on offer across parts of Scotland, northwest England, also parts of Wales and eventually southwest England. But to the south of any of this rain, lots of clear skies, so actually lots of sunshine around and lots of dry weather too. Some brighter spells too across northwest Scotland and Northern Ireland, though it's likely we'll start to see some showers into the afternoon. But as I say, where we do see any sunshine, some quite mild temperatures for the time of year, highs reaching around 15 degrees Celsius, so feeling a bit more like spring, particularly if you compare it to the weather we had yesterday. Now there will still be some cloud lingering on through this evening. This is still thick enough to produce some light outbreaks of rain and drizzle, particularly across any hills of Wales or northern areas of England. Just a few showers starting to push into the west of Northern Ireland, also northwest Scotland. But otherwise, Scotland should see plenty of clear skies as we progress through into this evening. Any showers largely easing away. This is fairly similar across Northern Ireland too. And with those clear skies, that means temperatures will soon dip away here, and it's likely we'll see quite a patchy frost across Scotland and Northern Ireland. But anywhere to the south of this, we've still got plenty of cloudy skies, so that's going to hold up temperatures a little bit more. So more towards the mid-single figures across much of England and Wales, but across Scotland, Northern Ireland, northern parts of England, a much chillier start as we head our way into Tuesday. Now, through Tuesday, it's really when we start to see that high pressure building. So any cloud largely fizzling away. It might just linger for a time across southeast England, parts of the south as well. And this at times will produce some drizzle. But for most of the country, there'll be lots of dry weather around and lots of sunshine. Still that little bit cooler across northern areas, but where the cloud breaks up in the south, still feeling pleasant for the time of year. Bye-bye.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Boxed Boiler sponsors the weather on GB News.
Just want to bring you this line, which is just breaking on Reuters, that a small isolated fire is now under control at the Saudi Aramco's Ras Tanura refining facility. There was an apparent drone strike there. In fact, on Reuters now saying that it had been hit by a drone. It has now been shut as a precautionary measure. The situation is now under control, but it looks as though, Mark, that Iran is now striking oil infrastructure.
Well, if it's a deliberate targeting, of course, of that oil and gas facility, it is deeply, deeply concerning because that will have real ramifications in terms of how that affects the likes of the oil price. Thus far, we've seen, according to the Iranians, them going after military facilities. If they're also going after the sort of fuel facilities, the oil and gas facilities in the region, it could be a major escalation in this crisis.
Yeah, it would have implications for all of us. There are some videos circulating online and there is fire and smoke above this facility. We haven't 100% verified it yet, but once we have, we'll get that to you here on GB News Breakfast, so do stay with us.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
No,
because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back,
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
and we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions. But every Friday night at 9 p.m, you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christie's Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
So he can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, this Trump made a good start. No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up? About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
No matter the state it's in, this is our nation. Join me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, for a genuine, honest discussion on where we have been, where we are going, and where we are with the people who set the direction. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News.
Britain deserves a newsroom that puts the facts and your voice first.
Well, and that's what you get on GB News. Lively debates, lively conversation.
And we're not afraid to hold power to account.
And each other. So join me, Andrew Pierce.
And me, Miriam Cates, for Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 on GB News.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Breakfast. It's 7:26. We've just got lots of breaking lines to bring you. Let's start in Doha, shall we? And this is on Reuters, saying that several blasts have been heard in the Qatari capital of Doha this morning.
These are live images.
These are live images on our screen.
No sign. There's haze there, of course, as you'd expect in that desert state, but no smoke that we can see certainly from the images there in the Qatari capital.
We also have this video that we can bring you now from Bahrain. This is from a GB News viewer who has sent this in to us. And we can see smoke, grey smoke billowing. Have we got the images from Bahrain that we can put up on the screen now? We can see smoke billowing here. This from the Naval Support Activity in Bahrain. It houses the headquarters of the US Navy's 5th Fleet. And it's been targeted over the weekend, but targeted yet again by ballistic missiles and drones launched by Iran. This video on your screens now is from a GB News viewer. A very large, grey, thick black smoke across the skies there this morning. So thank you very much for sending that in to us. We've got Robert Fox here in the studio. Robert, I just wanted to get your reaction to the news that the Aramco oil facility in Saudi has been struck by Iran this morning. It seems as though they may be going after oil infrastructure.
Unfortunately, it has been suspected that this was one of the things that they would do in retaliation. And it does seem to be on self-immolation, in other words, a suicide mission, because they've also seemed to have been attacking in the Straits of Hormuz. They announced it was closed, and then, curiously, the foreign minister, who's looking for talk, said, oh, they're not closed. So they're in and out. It's not clear who exactly is speaking for the Iranian government and the Iranian regime. But they seem to be prosecuting a really heavy drone and missile offensive. As we said, Doha, the 5th Fleet, they're going for two things. They seem to be going for energy assets, and they seem to be going for the bases of the main American military presence. The 5th Fleet, and of course, why Doha? It's the biggest, one of the biggest American bases abroad at all, certainly in the region, and it's where the heavier bombers, like the F-15, come from. And you really need them more than the carrier planes to really do the heavy stuff in taking out missile launch installations.
This is massively concerning in terms of an escalation, isn't it, Robert? Because not only would this impact the oil price, we've already seen the oil price shoot up this morning in response to what we've seen happen over the weekend, but it also is going to impact, it seems, offshore shipping, which would impact the whole world.
Well, as of yesterday, when I left the GB News studios, there were 150 ships at anchor off the Straits of Hormuz in the Gulf of Oman into the Arabian Sea. That now must be building up. There is an oil crisis, and there will be now. And it makes, I'm sorry just to add it, I don't want to be sort of a Johnny One Note on this, but it makes the Starmer posture looking so very, very peculiar. British assets are under attack. And, of course, he could be criticised. I was talking to Tobias about this just out there. In Parliament, is he going to be questioned about two things? Adequate force protection, as Mark has been talking about with RAF Akrotiri, in our bases, are they adequately protected? And we want him and his Attorney General to come clean about exactly what the rules of engagement are. It's absolutely essential now.
I just want to bring you a line from the regime spokesman, Ali Larijani, of course, the Secretary of the Supreme National Security Council in Iran, saying Trump's wishful thinking has dragged the whole region into an unnecessary war. And now he's rightly worried about more American casualties. It is indeed very sad that he's sacrificing American treasure and blood to advance Netanyahu's illegitimate expansionist ambitions. Well, you know, typical Iranian rhetoric and bellicose language is always used by the regime. But that issue, that point he's making there about a wider war, it's absolutely clear from what we're seeing, Robert. They are now intent on dragging other states in the region into a wider Middle East war with all of the absolute potential for death and destruction that will bring.
I think Larijani is a key figure. He may turn out to be the key figure because he's doing the talking. He's extremely articulate. He was very engaging back along when he was the Speaker of the House, and everybody said, is this the acceptable face at one point? He has been in charge of the terrible crackdown, by the way, on the protesters. I think he's playing a game, and it's a very important game that we have to watch him and what his offside of the Foreign Minister, Araichi, is doing and saying. But the threat of a wider war, as Mark says, is very, very grave indeed. And I think that the British posture will have to change. We may even have to be talking about reinforcing our forces, particularly in Akrotiri, but also possibly in Qatar, for their own protection.
Robert, I just want to bring in this breaking line. We've just been hearing from British Foreign Minister Yvette Cooper saying that Britain is setting up support systems to help evacuate its citizens from the Middle East. An estimated 300,000 people have now registered their presence in the region. She says we are looking at a wide range of options, working crucially with the travel industry and with government evacuation if necessary. The British government want airspace to be reopened, and it is sending rapid deployment teams to the region to work with the travel industry. What do you make of that, Robert?
Well, on that point, Robert, the fact is, all they can rely on now, as the British government is concerned, really, is civilian airlines to take these many thousands of people out, because we don't, for instance, with the Royal Navy, have the shipping anymore. Our amphibious landing ships, HMS Bulwark and HMS Albion, are being sold off. We no longer have that same level of capability to get big shipping to the area to take thousands of people at a time out of harm's way.
Are we really going to send an aircraft carrier? Because it's the only thing of size. It happened in Cyprus in 1974. I don't mean to go back to that. But also, it's protection. I wonder whether they would even contemplate doing a shuttle with the Voyager aircraft, because for the charter lines, for the main airlines, the insurance prospect is absolutely horrendous. How they're going to do it is very, very difficult indeed. And I'm sorry, it is illegal as well as a moral obligation to protect your citizens.
Well, some of the papers suggesting that the only way to do that at the moment would be to bus 300,000 people into Saudi and then fly them out of Saudi airspace, which is still open. But would the Aramco oil facility and the strikes on it this morning, would that change things potentially?
Yeah, it changes the picture completely, because it means the Eastern Desert is now a target. Does that mean that Riyadh and goodness knows, yes, they can reach it on the coast, on the Red Sea coast. Jeddah might even be on the list. It's very, very difficult indeed. And Mark's right. The rundown of just the amount of vehicles, ships, aircraft available is very, very limited.
So that window of opportunity may have been lost.
Thanks for the moment, Robert. As Ellie was mentioning there, that attack on the Aramco oil facility in Saudi Arabia, we've just received pictures that we're working to get on air. Hopefully, when we come back from the break, we may have those very dramatic images showing very heavy smoke over the Aramco facility. We were told a small fire that was being contained. It certainly doesn't look like that, and you'll see for yourselves as soon as we get those images to air.
Yeah, we'll be back with more updates to this breaking and developing news in the Middle East next on GB News Breakfast. Do stay with us.
Thank you for making us Britain's #1 news channel. Together, we have built something truly extraordinary.
Good morning. This is the latest AI travel news from gbnews.com. Use extra care on the A87 Skye Bridge, where high winds are making driving tricky. On the M4 eastbound, expect slow-moving traffic between Junction 28 at Tredegar Park and Junction 24 at Coldra. On the M6 northbound, between Junction 1 and Junction 2, there are lengthy delays after a crash, with lane closures in place. Also, on the M4, westbound between Junction 8 and Junction 10, a separate collision has shut 2 lanes. And on the trains, ScotRail services are disrupted between Gowrock and Wemyss Bay and Glasgow Central. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
No,
Because the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point.
Nothing's held back,
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
and we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Jubes & Kerr weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Westminster, the ultimate clique.
And you're fighting like rats in a sack.
But here on the Camilla Tominey Show, we ask the questions the establishment media is too scared to ask.
OK, let me ask you a straight question, because I know you're a straight-talking politician.
Whether it's net zero, illegal immigration or law and order, nothing is off limits.
You had the power then.
Yeah, as I
And
say,
now you've lost it.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show that's fearless.
But no, let me finish my question if you don't mind, because it is my show.
Sundays at 9:30, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News, the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world. Am I allowed to talk now? No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints. How many fingers have I got up? About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Breakfast. Just want to bring you this breaking line on Reuters. This is from the US Embassy in Bahrain. They are saying that terrorist groups and those inspired by such organisations are intent on attacking US citizens abroad. That's in the last few minutes from the US Embassy in Bahrain. Do we have the pictures that we can bring up from Bahrain, where we know there are 300 British personnel currently stationed? And we did hear this morning that one person was dead in that drone strike.
Yeah, we brought you those images a little earlier, 2 images of smoke billowing over Bahrain after fresh strikes that took place on the port facility there. And of course, the real concern there is, of course, it's home to the US 5th Fleet. It's their headquarters, but it's a joint naval base shared by the Royal Navy and other military personnel. According to the defence, and you're looking at those really dramatic images now of what is clearly a significant blaze down in the port facility in Bahrain. John Healey said just yesterday that the strike on Saturday landed within a few metres of where some of those 300 British military personnel are being stationed.
Well, let's bring in now former Royal Marine who served in Bahrain. James Glancy joins us live in the studio. James, what's it like for you seeing these images on the screens now of smoke billowing above Bahrain?
It's expected. Iran was always going to respond with asymmetric warfare because its command and control structures were immediately taken out within the first 24 hours of the operation. Now, obviously, we hope that no one's been injured, but we've got to expect there to be casualties over the next 30 days. Donald Trump specifically said this is at least a month-long campaign, so that I expect there will be at some point British civilian casualties and potentially military casualties.
And in terms of RAF Akrotiri, we're looking at those images now, not just one, but 2 drones. We've also had confirmation that Hezbollah, that proxy group, terrorist group aligned to Iran, based in southern Lebanon predominantly, has now entered the war. Israel has been bombing Hezbollah targets in southern Lebanon. Do we think, James, that the drones that will have attacked Akrotiri last night will have come from southern Lebanon, which is, of course, much closer to Cyprus. They're unlikely to have transited several countries from Iran to reach Cyprus.
Look, I don't want to speculate on that because ultimately these Shahed drones have ranges of around 600 kilometres. So, I mean, it's more likely that they came there. We just don't know. They have small warheads, but the problem is after decades of defence cuts across Britain's armed forces, we now concentrate a lot of our expensive equipment in single bases, which means they're much more vulnerable to strikes. And we don't yet have the anti-drone capability that you need for this type of conflict. Meanwhile, the Iranians have been preparing. They've dispersed their forces. They've embraced drone technology. We've seen them supporting Russia against Ukraine with these Shahed drones. So we're now in a predicament where the Iranians are actually ahead of us in drone technology, ahead of Britain. We're completely really reliant on what the US and Israel does.
Well, if we combine that with the rhetoric of the Prime Minister last night, very careful, very legal language of talking about specific limited defensive action and allowing the US to use UK bases, how do you think that is making our boys and girls feel in military bases in the Gulf and in Cyprus?
Well, from my experience, I would say that you'd have wanted to be there from the beginning alongside America and Israel, and it'd be very frustrating not to have engaged in the campaign initially. Keir Starmer made the wrong decision not allowing the USA to use Diego Garcia and Akrotiri to strike Iran, and that will have done huge damage to Britain's relationship with America. We used to talk of the special relationship. That is all but gone under Labour, and it will put the Chagos deal probably will be killed as a result of it. But look, this campaign has been done really as a joint operation between Israel and America. Britain's been completely kept out of it. We are almost totally irrelevant under Keir Starmer and Labour on the world stage. And what I would say, that statement he gave last night, he has essentially outsourced Britain's foreign policy to Germany and France and human rights lawyers. Lord Hermer seems to be calling the shots of what we can and can't do. That is unprecedented in British history.
I want to just bring you some significant news coming through to us here at GB News. A little earlier, we told you about an F-15 US combat jet that had crashed in Kuwait, that apparently had come under friendly fire. The crew survived, thankfully. If we got those images from earlier on of that F-15 and indeed the parachutes and the like on the ground, we'll try and bring that to you. But the very concerning development now is that, according to the Kuna news agency, several US warplanes have crashed. They say the crew have survived, but not just one, but they say, according to this news agency, several US warplanes have apparently crashed. Now, we don't know if that is an issue of friendly fire. It's certainly possible. I know we're asking you the impossible here, but is it possible that several planes at the same time could be taken out?
This is completely possible, because if you think about how much ordnance all these different nations are firing into the air as drones and missiles attack them. So you've got all that flak in the air, and then you've got air defence systems controlled by different nations.
Looking at it now, James.
I mean, let's hope that the pilot has ejected. But remember, in Gulf War I, Patriot missile systems from the USA shot down their own aircraft and British aircraft. It does happen. There are so many aeroplanes and drones in the air at one time. Coordinating that airspace is next to impossible. The main thing is going to happen. Let's expect more of this. Let's just hope in this instance that the pilots are alive and have parachuted safely to the ground.
Well, you can see them there up against the fence with the parachutes that have come out. The ejector seat, of course, a British invention, has saved countless lives over the decades, and it seems to have worked a treat here again in terms of saving those US personnel on board those aircraft.
Well, you've got to remember, the real nightmare here is parachuting behind enemy lines into Iran. That is any service person's worst nightmare, being captured by Islamic terrorists. Fortunately here it seems that they've parachuted into friendly territory.
Robert Fox, what do you make of what you've seen here?
From a journalistic point of view, it's extremely difficult because so many channels are coming in. It's very difficult to check because as I came in this morning, there were reports of an F-18, a carrier-based aircraft fighter, single seat, had got into trouble over Qatar. That has not been confirmed. It's very difficult seeing through the information soup. And the Iranians know that. They know how to play the information game. So we're in very, very difficult territory.
This has just been, Robert, to interrupt you, sorry for being so rude. I was doing that all weekend, but I think it's important to get these lines out as soon as they come in. The Kuwait Ministry of Defence has just confirmed that a number of US fighters fell. All of the pilots are safe, thankfully, but that would chime in with the reports from that news agency in Kuwait saying that several US fighters had crashed.
OK, we'll have more on that breaking news very shortly, just after the European weather.
No matter the state it's in, this is our nation. Join me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, for a genuine, honest discussion on where we have been, where we are going, and where we are with the people who set the direction. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock, only on GB News.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Yeah, that's got a bit of a smell.
A birthday fit for a Queenie.
My name was Queenie Robinson. Everybody wants to know about my name. Is it a real name? Is it a nickname? No, it's not. It's on my birth certificate. My father forgot what I should have been called, and I've never found out since.
But the name didn't stick, and Queenie quickly became known as Robbie after signing up to join the RAF. Robbie served in the Women's Auxiliary Air Force in a bomber command, despite still being 17.
She said, "You are 18, aren't you?" I said, "Oh, yes, I'll be 19 in February." Biggest lie out. I was only 17. She sort of gave me an old-fashioned look. She didn't believe me, I know.
Her first love, Frank Vincent, also served in the war.
There's Frank, yeah. And that's his aircraft, the Lancaster.
Aged 21, he flew in the Lancaster bomber. But just months before they were due to get married, Frank was killed in action. Robbie has kept Frank's love of aviation alive, flying a Spitfire, aged 101.
I had a male called James as my pilot, and he said, "Do you want to do a victory roll, Robbie?" So I said, "Oh, yes." So we turned turtle sort of thing, and there was me sort of sitting there looking at pink clouds upside down.
In December, Robbie took to the skies once again, this time without an engine, in a glider, aged 102. This week, Robbie is celebrating her 103rd birthday.
My friend suggests that my next ambition is to jump tandem out of a plane.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain deserves a newsroom that puts the facts and your voice first.
Well, and that's what you get on GB News. Lively debates, lively conversation.
And we're not afraid to hold power to account.
And each other. So join me, Andrew Pearce.
And me, Miriam Cates, for Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 on GB News.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Well, welcome back to GB News Breakfast. As I was saying before, we've effectively thrown out the running order. So many fast-moving developments coming out of the Middle East this morning. One, I think, of the most serious incidents, to just recap and tell you as much as we can in terms of the information we have, is now confirmation from the Kuwaiti government that several US warplanes have crashed. You're seeing one of them there, an F-15, coming down. It was reported earlier that these were as a result of friendly fire, a friendly fire incident with this F-15. We don't know if that is applicable to them all, but let me just read out this statement, first of all. This is spokesperson for the Ministry of Defence in Kuwait, stated that several US military aircraft crashed this morning, confirming the complete safety of their crews. So what they mean is that the crews have ejected safely, thankfully. He explained that the relevant authorities immediately initiated search and rescue procedures whereby the crews were evacuated and transferred to the hospital to check on their health status and provide the necessary medical care. The official spokesperson added that direct coordination was conducted with the friendly US forces regarding the circumstances of the incident, and joint technical measures were taken, whatever that means. He affirmed that the concerned authorities are following up on the investigations to determine the cause of the incident, calling for information to be obtained from its official sources. So it could be friendly fire. We don't know at this stage. It just seems remarkable that not just one aircraft, but several combat aircraft have been, it seems, either shot from the skies or some kind of technical malfunction that has brought down 3 aircraft.
Well, we've got Tobias Elwood and Dawn Neeson in the studio with us. Very briefly, Tobias, what's your assessment of what we're hearing there?
Well, there's 2 takeaways here. Firstly is just the fog of war, just how complicated it can get. We remember Venezuela, how clear-cut that was, how forensic that was, very simple. It was a complicated mission, but ultimately it looked simple from afar and ended very, very quickly indeed. This isn't the case. We're just a couple of days into this, and this is the beginning. So this is what Donald Trump warned about. The second takeaway is that Kuwait, Bahrain and the UAE, they're going to be the targets. That's what Iran is now focusing on. This is the low-lying fruit that they want to attack.
OK, Tobias Elwood, Dawn Neeson, do stay with us. We'll be back with more breaking news after this short break.
Warm and cosy, with a chance of zero visibility. Boxed Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hello there, good morning. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. As we head into a new week, we have high pressure building. We'll see a mix of cloud and also some sunshine, but where we do see any sunny spells, it's certainly going to be feeling a bit more like spring. Now for today, unfortunately, there is still some rain in the forecast. Quite a wet day on offer across parts of Scotland, northwest England, also parts of Wales and eventually southwest England. But to the south of any of this rain, lots of clear skies, so actually lots of sunshine around and lots of dry weather too. Some brighter spells too across northwest Scotland and Northern Ireland, though it's likely we'll start to see some showers into the afternoon. But as I say, where we do see any sunshine, some quite mild temperatures for the time of year, highs reaching around 15 degrees Celsius, so feeling a bit more like spring, particularly if you compare it to the weather we had yesterday. Now there will still be some cloud lingering on through this evening. This is still thick enough to produce some light outbreaks of rain and drizzle, particularly across any hills of Wales or northern areas of England. Just a few showers starting to push into the west of Northern Ireland, also northwest Scotland, but otherwise Scotland should see plenty of clear skies as we progress through into this evening. Any showers largely easing away. This is fairly similar across Northern Ireland too. And with those clear skies, that means temperatures will soon dip away here, and it's likely we'll see quite a patchy frost across Scotland and Northern Ireland. But anywhere to the south of this, we've still got plenty of cloudy skies, so that's going to hold up temperatures a little bit more. So more towards the mid-single figures across much of England and Wales, but across Scotland, Northern Ireland, northern parts of England, a much chillier start as we head our way into Tuesday. Now, through Tuesday, it's really when we start to see that high pressure building. So any cloud largely fizzling away. It might just linger for a time across southeast England, parts of the south as well. And this at times will produce some drizzle. But for most of the country, there'll be lots of dry weather around and lots of sunshine. Still that little bit cooler across northern areas, but where the cloud breaks up in the south, still feeling pleasant for the time of year. Bye-bye.
Warm and cosy, with a chance of zero visibility. Boxed Boiler sponsors the weather on GB News.
Thank you to our global community for watching and listening to GB News. We're not only the #1 news channel in Britain, we're chosen by you around the world.
Good morning. This is the latest AI travel news from gbnews.com. High winds are making crossings tricky on the A87 Skye Bridge, so take extra care. On the M4 eastbound, there is an incident with a lane closed between junction 35 at Pencode and junction 34 at Miskin. In Sunderland, the A90 northbound is shut between the A1231 and the A184 after an overturned vehicle. Also, the M4 westbound between junction 8 and junction 10 has a road traffic crash with 2 of 4 lanes closed, causing around 40 minutes of delays. And on the trains, ScotRail has disruption between Gourock and Glasgow Central. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
A camper van and cash could be yours in our very latest Great British Giveaway. You could be driving away in this brand new Benavan 122. This 2026 model, worth over £67,000, comes with all of the mod cons you'd expect. And that's not all, as you'll also get an incredible £25,000 in tax-free cash to boost your bank account this year. For a chance to win a camper van and cash, text prize to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entry starts at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB20 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 1st of May. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, though.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News, the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
No matter the state it's in, this is our nation. Join me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, for a genuine, honest discussion on where we have been, where we are going, and where we are with the people who set the direction. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News.
Good morning. Breaking news as the Prime Minister is criticised for his response to Iran.
Yes, it comes as Keir Starmer confirmed that the US could use UK bases to strike Iran, but he stopped short of backing the war.
The United States has requested permission to use British bases. We have taken the decision to accept this request.
Well, after sources confirm the British RAF base in Cyprus was targeted by 2 drones, is it only a matter of time now until the UK gets directly involved?
Well, Donald Trump has returned to the White House, warning that Americans should be prepared for more US personnel potentially losing their lives. 3 US personnel have already died.
Combat operations continue at this time in full force, and they will continue until all of our objectives are achieved.
The Home Secretary exclusively tells GB News that she would be willing to live next to a migrant camp. Here's a sneak peek.
Would you live next door to Cromer or next door to a migrant camp?
Well, look, I mean, I'm in a constituency that's had asylum hotels as well.
Happy, would you, with your children?
Look, I do understand, but look, we've got to put people somewhere.
Meanwhile, Reform's Treasury spokesman Robert Jenrick says he'll reveal shocking information about the Chancellor at 8:30 a.m. this morning, so just stay tuned for the latest.
Hello there, good morning. It's the first week of meteorological spring. For some, that means sunshine. For others, it's quite a wet day in store. Stay tuned and I'll have all the details.
Good morning. It's just gone 8 o'clock. I'm Ellie Costello.
And I'm Mark White. This is GB News Breakfast. Right, just want to bring you right up to date with information coming out of Kuwait, where first thing this morning we were reporting that one US fighter aircraft, an F-15, had been shot down, apparently by friendly fire over Kuwait. Thankfully, the pilot survived. But now we're getting reports, confirmation from the Kuwaiti authorities that several US fighter jets have apparently crashed. We can show you some images just in of one of the pilots, one of the crew, having successfully ejected, landing down on the ground or heading towards the ground in Kuwait. And we saw remarkable images of the F-15 actually spinning around in the air, flames coming from the back of that aircraft. Well, now it seems that it seems remarkable that several aircraft at the same time could have been taken out by friendly fire, but that was certainly the initial reports. Soon as we get more on that, we'll bring that to you on GB News Breakfast.
Yeah, we have had a statement from Kuwait Ministry of Defence on this, saying that a number of US fighters fell, but as we can see from the pictures there, thankfully, the pilots are safe.
Well, the Shadow Defence Secretary, James Cartledge, joins us now. Good morning to you, James. Thank you for speaking to us this morning. Do the Conservatives back the military action that Donald Trump has launched?
Yes.
We've not heard that from our own Prime Minister. What do you think about that?
Well, it's deja vu for me, if you don't mind me saying, because I did the media round last June, and I would have spoken to your programme, when, if you recall, the US and Israel bombed the Iranian nuclear facilities, which is, of course, this is the whole point of this. It's such a threat, the idea of Iran with a nuclear weapon. And I came on the programme and I was asked, and I said yes. And Labour said exactly the same thing. They said we didn't participate when asked repeatedly whether they supported it. And this is extraordinary to hear the same thing again, unable to say where they stand, sitting very awkwardly on the fence. The Prime Minister now effectively U-turning to grant permission in slightly different circumstances. I said a few weeks ago, I said, look, if the US, our closest ally, judged that now was the time to take further action in respect of the Iranian nuclear program, not least because presumably the talks have shown Iran is not willing to give it up, then yes, if they asked for permission and hypothetically we were in government, we would grant it. We've been incredibly clear on that, and it's disappointing to see the Prime Minister unable to give strong leadership at a time when this country badly needs it.
Response to the RAF base Nakwatiri being hit by a drone strike overnight. Not one, but two drones, we now understand. Obviously, sovereign soil, 2,000 British personnel there. What are the implications of that, and how should we be responding?
Well, a very, very important point, and obviously the most critical thing from the point of view of British politicians is the well-being of our service personnel and all our people in the region. It's obviously concerning to hear about this drone attack. A lot of information comes out in these situations and you have to wait for full verification, but as far as we're aware, as you say, two drones, one of which was taken down, the other causing what appears to be minor damage. And I think it shows that, whether we like it or not, we have got to stand strong here. And I think we need to ensure that we've got all possible assets in place to defend our people, our personnel, and our bases. And I think that in a situation like this, you want clarity from the government. You want to know where they stand. You want to know there's a firm hand. And so whether it's, I think we're going to hear about this later, plans to move people out of the region, which would obviously be quite an undertaking, or this critical point of defending our bases, we just need that strong leadership, which we're not seeing at the moment.
It would be quite an undertaking, given that we've decommissioned so many of our ships that would be, ideal for that particular task, such as our landing ships, the HMS Albion and Bulwark. But can I just get your reaction, James, to what seems to be the widening of this war by the Iranians. We know they've been targeting countries in their immediate proximity, and now going after the Aramco oil and gas facility in Saudi Arabia. The local media are reporting a small contained blaze. We've just seen pictures that we're endeavouring to bring to you, a massive blaze there. And of course, this coming on the back of these oil tankers that were targeted yesterday.
Well, 2 points. If I may just respond to the first one you made, Mark, which is a very, very good point. And you know, just to be clear, I was the procurement minister in office at the time, and I said to the leadership of the Navy, in respect of those 2 landing vessels, I said, if we keep them at readiness, can you assure me that if the balloon went up and we needed to use them, that we could? And they assured me that was the case. On the second point regarding
the situation in terms of the oil and gas. Oh yeah, I would do apologise about that. It happens every time, James. Just fight on, through them.
No, I will fight on. And look, it's an incredibly important question. This has widened already. The stakes are incredibly high here because, you know, in my view, the idea of Iran with nuclear weapons, this is a country which is happy to spray missiles around the region, is a terribly frightening prospect, especially a regime that's willing to kill tens of thousands of its own people. So I think this is the right step, but it carries risks. There's no point in denying that, and one of those risks is a wider conflagration. You're seeing evidence of that, and I think we have to stand strong here, and we've got to stand by our allies, and we need to see strong leadership from the Prime Minister. So obviously it's a concern when we see these wider impacts, but ultimately I do think these attacks were justified, and I'm afraid you're now seeing the reality of the Iranian regime, the way it's lobbing missiles left, right and centre, lashing out, as the Secretary of State for Defence rightly said. So hopefully we get more information later today in a statement, I think, by the Prime Minister, and understand what exactly he is going to do to lead the country through this in the way that we all want to see.
You would have seen that 3 people were killed and 14 people were injured in a Texas bar shooting over the weekend. The FBI is now investigating it as a possible terror attack, and some reports this morning that the man in this attack was wearing a shirt featuring an Iranian flag design. In terms of security here in Britain, how concerned are you about security implications in our country? We have heard reports that there have been concerns in the past few years about Iranian sleeper cells operating here in the UK.
Well, I think, to be fair, government ministers have made the point repeatedly about these 20 attacks intercepted by the security service here in the UK with Iran connections. So it just shows how malign and serious they are. And I'm bound to point out, you know, they were the ones who gave missiles to the Houthis who were attacking international shipping, including our Type 45 that was out there in the Red Sea. So they are a very malign threat, and I just think it shows we need to be absolutely on our guard at home and abroad. I don't know the full circumstances of the shooting you referred to in the United States. It's terribly tragic, whatever the circumstances ultimately, but I think we have to be alive to the terror threat at home. I believe there's been some discussion on that, whether to raise the level, and I think it just underlines how serious the situation is.
OK, James Cartledge, thank you so much for your input this morning and for bearing with the numpties behind you. We always appreciate your thoughts. Listen, we have an expert panel assembled here for you on GB News Breakfast this morning. The wonderful Don Neeson, of course, GB News' very own Don Neeson, and Tobias Ellwood, former chair of the Defence Select Committee, and of course Robert Fox, defence editor at the Evening Standard. Could we just ask you, first of all, Tobias, that point I thought was a very pertinent point that James Cartledge raised there about these 2 landing ships, these Royal Marines vessels that we were told were no longer really fit for purpose, even though they weren't that old. James making the point that he had actually asked the Navy, you know, if we put them at extended readiness, could you bring them back relatively quickly? They said they could. Despite that, this government has effectively sold them off.
Yeah, it's another reflection of just how unprepared we are for the storm clouds that are now gathering and indeed arriving. It isn't just in the Middle East, it's other parts of the world. The world is getting more dangerous not less, and we're not doing enough about it. We are finding ourselves on the back foot, and this is just one example. But if I may, he touched on something which I hope he will explore further. There's bound to be a statement today in Parliament, otherwise the opposition will call for an urgent question. So this will be discussed in Parliament, quite rightly, today. We need to mobilise. We need to be sending a Type 45. They're the ones with the Samson radar. They're the ones with the air defences to Cyprus. That's what needs to happen now.
It's incredible. There are no, as far as we know, Royal Naval assets in the region. We had, just until recently, 4 minesweepers, a frigate, a Royal Fleet Auxiliary vessel, all there, a Bay-class landing ship, actually, all there and able, potentially, to respond. We've got nothing. We've pulled them out.
2 separate things there. The landing ships are going to be good if we need to evacuate personnel, and we've heard that Americans have been killed. There's a possibility, I'm afraid, that Britons will be targeted as well. But ultimately, we need to defend Cyprus. We need to be on the front foot. The low-lying fruit of where Iran is attacking isn't Israel directly because of the incredible air defences that Israel has developed. It is the Gulf nations. That's where these rockets are being hit. That's where we need to step in. We can't do that if all our kit is stuck in the UK.
Dawn, let's bring you in at this point. We're just speaking to James Cartledge there about security implications here in Britain. How concerned are you?
Well, I mean, I don't want to worry anyone, but I was making a point over the weekend of talking to as many Iranians as I possibly could, people actually living in Iran and seeing what the situation was like for them there, what they wanted going forward. They're the important ones in this. And there was one chap I was talking to, and he'd finally got through to his sister. I was talking to his sister. Are you safe? Are you well? She was worried about food. She was stockpiling food, etc. But she said she felt safe at the moment. And the most worrying thing, Ellie, she said to her brother, who's in London, I'm worried more about your safety. And we do know that when we have British politicians attending marches and demonstrations this weekend supporting the Islamist regime, and an Islamist regime, by the way, that has declared death to the West, death to England, describe us as little Satan, we have British politicians attending those marches. So that I found quite chilling, the fact that she was more worried about her brother in London than she was in Iran herself.
We have a map of the region that we can bring you, pinpointing locations that have come under fire in different countries with bases. And this is key, I think, Tobias and Robert, if we could get your thoughts on this, because you were saying earlier about the close proximity of these countries to Iran and also the fact that these countries are hosting predominantly US military facilities. Now, as far as Iran is concerned, makes them a target.
Yep, absolutely. And I think actually the thing that you've been flagging up, the attack on the oil field or the terminal, is very, very important. You and I are having a bit of ancient history. It's actually not so ancient history. It was in 2019 that they attacked with drones very effectively and low-level cruise missiles the Abqaiq field. That cut production from Saudi Arabia by over a third, and they produce 1.5 million barrels a day. They're really going for that. But the other thing that we've been flagging up is the civilian presence in the region. I think 300,000 Brits, which the government has been talking about, that's a very conservative estimate. I think it's near 500,000. And as you both have been saying, there are no ships to get them out. The 3 Bay-class landing platform dock. They're big. You can put a lot of... They're all laid up at the moment, effectively. And we only have 2 Type 45 destroyers available.
It's actually going beyond shocking. I think it is a national scandal that we could have a situation here where we are potentially entering into a very serious war in the Middle East, and so many of our assets now are either retired, tied up in maintenance, not available to us to send to try to pick up the many thousands of civilians that clearly want to be evacuated from that area.
We don't have the assets. There are plans, given it's due. Type 26 coming through, Type 31. These are the new frigates and destroyers that are
years away still.
But they are years away. That's the whole point. And when you see that war is coming to you, this is the point. We're not seeking war. The world is getting more dangerous. We have to defend our assets, and we can't do that with the current platforms. I'm going to go on a limb here and say you've got to take the party politics out of this, because this actually requires spending money. And I would love to see Nigel Farage, Kemi Badenoch, Keir Starmer in a quiet room somewhere agreeing to say we've got to spend more money on defence. Let's take this out of the political football. But no government wants to spend more money because they're going to get grief from the domestic audience, and no opposition is going to call for more spending, let's say increasing income tax by 1%. That's the price of a cappuccino a day for all of us, by the way. But if you can tell the nation, the British people, war is coming to us, we need to prepare, let's actually spend more in defence, I think that could happen.
That's the cultural problem. I have been informed across Whitehall now there are great divisions, and there are certain very the prominent ministries where there is a feeling, why do we have to talk about threat? And they're really having a downer on defence. The Defence Review was delivered. It had to be funded. It had to be funded with the Defence Investment Plan by September. We're lucky if we're going to get it by April. The shenanigans that Mark alluded to, and it's on a quieter day, it would be a huge story, is the helicopter order for the medium-lift helicopter. I tell you, as a senior defence correspondent, I was informed by various sources. It was on, it was off, it was on, it was off 4 times within 36 hours. And eventually, Rachel Reeves, on the back of a very good article in the Daily Telegraph, it must be said we can't afford to allow the helicopter industry to fall apart.
Robert, I just want to bring these breaking lines in that we're just getting here from Saudi Defence Ministry spokesperson. They've been speaking to Al Arabiya TV in the past few moments. They're talking about the fire at Saudi's Aramco oil facility. They're saying there's limited fire there at the refinery due to falling debris. They said there's no injuries among civilians due to this attack. Also getting a line from Israel. Israel were asked if they are considering a ground invasion of Lebanon. A military spokesperson has said in the past few minutes that all options are now on the table.
I can't see that happening. I think Israel would simply just spread themselves too thin.
I think they will. I'm sorry to disagree with you. I think they'll go up to the Litani if these drones are being launched.
The Litani River, pointed out, is very much in the south of Lebanon itself. Perhaps that would be an easy advance. They've been there before. But to place it into context, Hezbollah was created in 1982. It's been destroyed so many times. And this is what Israel perhaps needs to recognise, is that you can destroy the machinery of military force, but if you don't deal with the mindset, then you're going to see another generation come in with the same hate, same venom, and then rebuild and regroup again. The difference here is that their support, the bankers, have been Iran. And if you can change Iran, which is the source, then you change the optics of the Middle East. And that is the big question. As Britain now gets involved in this, to Donald Trump, who doesn't normally have the bandwidth to deal with what happens next, the politics, he just wants to do the battle and then go home, is to say, let's actually craft an Iran that is going to be peaceful and prosperous, so different from the last 7 or 8 decades, because every single decade, every single American president since '79 has been troubled about what to do about Iran. Never have you had a better opportunity than to actually move into a new chapter if we grasp that nettle.
Just to bring you another breaking line, International Atomic Energy Agency has called an emergency meeting, which obviously means that nuclear concerns are growing, which is expanding the conflict even further.
Can I just add to that? I mean, that's and Abcake is another example. Is you have the battlefield. That's the bombs are flying, are being dropped. But if you can then hit civilian assets, and we see this in Ukraine as well, infrastructure and so forth. If a nuclear civilian site is hit, the consequences of that are absolutely huge, and that's what we need to be concerned about. All the more reason to send British assets in there to help and defend.
Because we mustn't forget that that's what started this, about the fact that a regime like Iran having a nuclear bomb. I mean, Iran is the only non-nuclear armed state to have enriched uranium, and it's at near a weapons grade. I mean, they were that far away from it. I mean, this is what started this. We, the West, no country, can allow a regime like Iran, who's sworn to destroy the West, have a nuclear warhead.
Robert?
You're quite right. That's what started it, because they misplayed their cards. They're super smart. Aramco, the foreign minister, said, oh, yes, maybe we'll meet again in Geneva. They were due to either at the end of this coming week or the beginning of the week after. Oh, it's going quite well, and was completely hit by this. But what they realised, the Americans particularly, that they were negotiating in bad faith. It's pretty clear, because the IAEA, exactly as Dawn has said, were very worried about accountability. They knew that things were being concealed, and there are 400 kilograms, to be quite precise about it, about 60% enriched uranium, and it takes next to no time to get to 90%, and you can make bombs and lethal warheads on their very good missiles very quickly.
Tobias, just want to bring this line in from Israel. The Israeli defence minister has just said in the past few minutes the chief of Hezbollah is now a marked target for elimination by the IDF.
Yes, this is an expansion of the war. It is escalation. Israel is very clever with this intelligence, arguably one of the best in the world. And the way it was able to kill or maim many Hezbollah targets through those mobile phones, if you remember that,
yes,
and the pagers and so on. I mean, very, very clever indeed. So this was, I think, something Israel would have anticipated and expected of Hezbollah getting involved. Across the way of the Red Sea, of course, we've got the Houthis too, which I'm sure will be in the next day or so as well. This is the expansion of the war in the Middle East, and that is the biggest concern as to then where this goes. What is the off-ramp? The danger, if I can say, is Donald Trump turning around to the new regime, a little bit like Venezuela, and saying, right, if we call it stumps, if we stop here, if you behave yourself, then we can all go home. The worry about that is that the people of Iran are now left with a different form of dictatorship, but the circumstances haven't changed. And 2-3 years later, Iran will rearm, regroup, and we'll be back here again.
Well, listen, thanks for your input for the moment. We're going to continue, obviously, our discussions throughout the morning. You're looking at there is the skyline over Tel Aviv. Ignore that caption in the top left. It's not Jerusalem. That is the Israeli city of Tel Aviv, where they have come under repeated salvos of missile attack from Iran. Thankfully, not for a couple of hours at least. So that might be indicative of the very significant bombing operations taking place by the Israelis targeting these missile launchers. So we continue to monitor that situation. If we get any word of alerts, of course, we'll bring that to you. And I just want to say as well, just very briefly, with this situation at the oil refinery, the Aramco oil refinery in Saudi Arabia, don't want to contradict the Saudi Defence Ministry, but they say a small isolated fire contained. Well, Aramco have closed down the facility, and the images that we have that we're working to get to you as soon as possible show a fairly significant blaze.
Yeah, anything but small and contained. In the meantime, let's get a check on the weather with Honor Krisick.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Boxed Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hello there, good morning. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. As we head into a new week, we have high pressure building. We'll see a mix of cloud and also some sunshine, but where we do see any sunny spells, it's certainly going to be feeling a bit more like spring. Now for today, unfortunately, there is still some rain in the forecast. Quite a wet day on offer across parts of Scotland, northwest England, also parts of Wales and eventually southwest England. But to the south of any of this rain, lots of clear skies, so actually lots of sunshine around and lots of dry weather too. Some brighter spells too across northwest Scotland and Northern Ireland, though it's likely we'll start to see some showers into the afternoon. But as I say, where we do see any sunshine, some quite mild temperatures for the time of year, highs reaching around 15 degrees Celsius, so feeling a bit more like spring, particularly if you compare it to the weather we had yesterday. Now there will still be some cloud lingering on through this evening. This is still thick enough to produce some light outbreaks of rain and drizzle, particularly across any hills of Wales or northern areas of England. Just a few showers starting to push into the west of Northern Ireland, also northwest Scotland. But otherwise, Scotland should see plenty of clear skies as we progress through into this evening. Any showers largely easing away. This is fairly similar across Northern Ireland too. And with those clear skies, that means temperatures will soon dip away here, and it's likely we'll see quite a patchy frost across Scotland and Northern Ireland. But anywhere to the south of this, we've still got plenty of cloudy skies, so that's going to hold up temperatures a little bit more. So more towards the mid-single figures across much of England and Wales, but across Scotland, Northern Ireland, northern parts of England, a much chillier start as we head our way into Tuesday. Now, through Tuesday, it's really when we start to see that high pressure building. So any cloud largely fizzling away. It might just linger for a time across southeast England, parts of the south as well. And this at times will produce some drizzle. But for most of the country, there'll be lots of dry weather around and lots of sunshine. Still that little bit cooler across northern areas, but where the cloud breaks up in the south, still feeling pleasant for the time of year. Bye-bye.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Now do stay with us. Still to come, as thousands of Britons are stranded in the Middle East, the Foreign Office begins a mass evacuation. We're going to tell you more about that next on GB News Breakfast.
Bold. They are under no illusion. Ray. Are you a human trafficker? Boundless. I've had enough of the nonsense, and I'm not afraid to say it. Don't get this on the BBC. Every weeknight, I tear through the headlines. The smell of gasoline. Should we be worried about it? From Westminster madness to cultural war chaos. What I'm going to do now, they are throwing things out the car as we speak. Get ready, Britain. Here we go. Patrick Christie's tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Britain's newsroom, weekday mornings from 9:30.
There are at least 500 dumps scouring the British countryside, and there's a massive one, which we've been at this morning for GB News in Wigan. It's been dubbed the most dangerous of its kind in the country, and it's on land partially owned by King. It stinks. It's attractive. It will be a magnet for rodents, rats. Look at that.
You just think.
If you're listening on the radio, it is. Well, how high would you say that is?
Well,
18 foot high.
Concept, but yeah, at least meters and meters, and you can understand.
If you died in that, you'd be dead.
You would. Wouldn't recommend it. You can understand. Well, it's taller than the trees. It is taller than the trees. It's taller than a JCB. How on earth did this happen? Well, joining us now from the dump itself is GB News national reporter Sophie Reaper. Sophie, we've just been saying how you can understand fly tipping, people dumping the odd bin bag or piece of furniture, but how do you go from that to this enormous piece of rubbish dump?
It's disgraceful.
I think that's the question on the lips of a lot of the local residents in this area, Miriam. People asking how and why this has been allowed to happen and why nothing's being done about it. We got the chance to speak exclusively to the owner of one of those houses, whose house is right there, his garden backs right onto it. Here's what he had to say.
Well, down here, you've forgotten. The council ignore it. They just skirt around the edges of it, doing nothing. When they cleaned up the one in Oxfordshire, they said they're only cleaning that one up because it was a fire risk. This has already been on fire once. It cost over £500,000 to put the fire out, and it's going to happen again. So, but just by their own standards, I think they should clear it up. If it costs £3 million, it costs £3 million.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it? Because the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to GB News Breakfast, a slightly different programme, of course, as we are open-ended and rolling with all of the breaking developments coming out of the Middle East. There have been many this morning, and one that we want to bring you right up to speed with is an attack on the Aramco oil refinery in Saudi Arabia. Take a look at these images. The Saudi Defence Ministry saying that a small fire has been contained at the facilities. Does that look like a small fire to you? For our radio audience travelling into work or wherever you are this morning, there are huge plumes of thick smoke coming from that oil facility, and indeed we've had it confirmed by Aramco that they have now closed down the refinery. That is of great concern, understandably, because in conjunction with the strike on this oil facility, there have been oil tankers in the Persian Gulf, in the Oman Straits as well, that have been targeted yesterday by the Iranians. A number of direct strikes on these vessels. The oil price, understandably, has risen quite significantly, so real concern. And that affects you and me, all of us here in the UK, in terms of fuel prices. So we'll keep you right up to date with all the latest happenings in the Middle East. But you're looking there at images of the Aramco oil refinery struck, it seems, by an Iranian drone. That oil refinery now ablaze.
Yeah, and we just have been hearing from Aramco in the last hour saying it's been shut as a precautionary measure after it was hit by a drone. They also go on to say that it's not clear whether it's 2 further drones, but 2 drones were also intercepted at Aramco's facility. No civilians have been killed. That's what they've said this morning. Now, to politics at home at 8:32, and the Home Secretary has doubled down on the government's plans to close all hotels housing asylum seekers by 2029.
Well, that was in an interview with GB News' very own Christopher Hope during Shabana Mahmood's visit to Denmark last week. Let's take a look.
Denmark's asylum system has cut claims to a 40-year low, and the UK government wants to find out what lessons they can learn. Yes. We went with Shabana Mahmood, the Home Secretary, to Copenhagen to visit an arrival centre and a deportation centre. Later, she went to see an asylum appeals court. Ms Mahmood saw the whole process in one day.
He wants to see how a left-wing government can tackle migration and make it work for people by removing the right to work, have a temporary reason to remain, remove the merry-go-round of appeals through the courts. A single appeal system works in Denmark. Can that be applied to the UK? And also, when a country becomes safe, people are removed here and go back from where they came. That's the idea that Shabana Mahmood wants to pick up from Denmark and see if it will work in the UK. The question is, will the left of her party accept that?
If you have an openness to the world and to migration in a way where you don't put any bonds on people that aren't able to contribute positively to this welfare model, then you will see your welfare model deteriorate and you will let down the people that you actually represent in government.
Tackling illegal migration remains a tough and difficult priority for the Labour government and also for the party's natural supporter base. But Ms Mahmood is determined to take action. From today, asylum cases will be reviewed every 30 months, not every 5 years. The hope is that more migrants will be deported.
There's no one silver bullet. I wish there was. Honestly, if I could just do one thing and it would solve it all, I would have done it. I would just say, beware people who come along and say, I can just do this one thing and it will be done, because it's not true. If it was, the Tories would have done it or we would have done it and it would have been sorted.
That approach,
but we can fix this.
Time will tell if she can. Christopher Hope, GB News in Copenhagen, Denmark.
Well, let's go back to our panel now. Former chairman of the Defence Select Committee, Tobias Ellwood, defence editor at the Evening Standard, Robert Fox, and GB News' very own Dawn Neeson. Morning, you
Morning. A finer panel you could not wish to have.
And you will not
on a morning like this.
You will not find. Robert, let's start with you and the Aramco oil facility. Have we got those pictures that we can get up again? It's one of the largest oil hubs in the world. We've also just seen a video of the mass evacuation of staff from this site. What does this mean for us?
Well, it does mean, as Mark has been saying, we're in for an oil spike. We're in an oil crisis, and you have to link it with the warning off shipping in the Straits of Hormuz, and we know 2 have been struck under mysterious circumstances. 1 had to be evacuated. An Iranian shadow fleet, so-called, tanker, obviously probably to or from China, which now comes into play because it's a main client of sanctioned Iranian oil. And I think this is where we see the crisis, the war, go truly global.
Well, in a worrying development, Robert, you said to us off camera just a few minutes ago that you're hearing from a source that what we might be witnessing is the aftermath of a strike from the Houthis, another proxy group, terror group, linked to Iran out of Yemen. I mean, these groups have been notable in the first couple of days of this war, with their lack of activity, but it now seems we've got Hezbollah in southern Lebanon, now the Houthis in Yemen, getting into the fight. If this has come from Yemen, they're certainly much closer to Saudi Arabia.
It was quite precise, the report. It was falling debris, which can be almost as dangerous as the projectile, as the explosive part of the drone falling on the thing, starting this fire, which seems certainly in its implications to have been considerable. And it happened within hours of Hezbollah getting involved. I'm sorry, journalists are very poor prophets and predictors, but as I've been saying since yesterday, I think we're going to get the conflict will peak between now and Wednesday, given what we know about the limitations of Iranian stocks of drones, but above all, missiles. And I think it's a pretty desperate game that they're playing. And we have to look, you use the awful word, asymmetric again, and I think that I fear, because their groups, their sleeper groups are widespread, particularly through southern Europe, expect something else as well.
What do you mean by that?
A terrorist attack.
Tobias, would you agree with that assessment?
I would. I mean, just firstly on the attack on Abqaiq, I visited the facilities after the 2019 attack. Remember, it was attacked then. I think by the Houthis too. So the idea that they have now followed up on this is very plausible indeed. The significance to Saudi Arabia cannot be overstated. It's, as you say, the largest oil refinery in the world. This is what keeps Saudi Arabia going, keeps the money coming in. And 90% of Saudi Arabia's oil goes out the Straits of Hormuz, and this is asymmetric. This is the grey zone warfare. It's moving away from attacking military targets, political targets, and so forth, to infrastructure as well. Iran knows that if it tries to hit Israel, what an incredible air defense that country has. These other countries, they don't have that. And I couldn't understand when I visited Abqaiq, this oil refinery, I asked that question. Why don't you have Patriots here? Why don't you have these the air defences, as we don't here in the UK, by the way? And they said, yes, we need to look into that. And I think they will now be asking themselves, why didn't they invest more? But we're going to see more of this. Right across Kuwait, right at UAE, and indeed Bahrain, Saudi Arabia. This is where Iran is going to focus on.
It's such an obvious target. It could bring the world to its knees. And if you're talking about how it's going to affect us here at home, when it was targeted in 2019, it halved Saudi Arabia's crude output and saw the biggest surge in oil prices since the Gulf War.
Basra will be next, but that's the other main facilities for many countries indeed that we know of all because of the Iraq war. Massive concentration of refining capability and a junction, the port from which many of these ships then go through the Straits. So I suspect that's where Iran will be focusing next.
OK, panel, thank you for the moment. We'll come back to you. No love lost, of course, between Saudi Arabia and Iran. They've already indicated the potential that they might enter this war in offensive action against Iran.
Now, do stay with us on GB News Breakfast. Next, Lord Wolney is going to be here with us with his insight into political violence and asking how might the situation in Iran impact the UK. But first, if you are travelling to work or school this morning, here is your traffic and travel update.
Good morning. This is the latest AI travel news from gbnews.com. On the M8, the off-slip at Junction 3 near Dechmont is partly blocked by a broken-down vehicle, causing traffic interruptions. Meanwhile, the M4 eastbound has a lane closure between Junction 35 at Pencode and Junction 34 at Miskin due to an incident. Additionally, on the M4 westbound, a collision is causing a lane closure between Junction 8 and Junction 10, resulting in delays of around 20 minutes. And on the trains, ScotRail reports ongoing disruption between Gourock and Glasgow Central. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions. But every Friday night at 9 p.m, you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christie's Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
So he can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up?
About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
No matter the state it's in, this is our nation. Join me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, for a genuine, honest discussion on where we have been, where we are going, and where we are with the people who set the direction. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News.
Britain deserves a newsroom that puts the facts and your voice first.
Well, and that's what you get on GB News. Lively debates, lively conversation.
And we're not afraid to hold power to account.
And each other. So join me, Andrew Pierce.
And me, Miriam Cates, for Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 on GB News.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to GB News Breakfast, where we're bringing you continued coverage of the events in the Middle East and indeed the wider world with worrying reports through from the United States of what is being treated as a possible terrorist attack on a bar in Austin, Texas, that led to multiple injuries and deaths, and an indication that the attacker was wearing a top that had the Iranian flag on it, as well as also links to Allah, to the Prophet Muhammad. So some real concern about the potential for terrorist attacks in the in the days and weeks ahead that may be linked to Iran. To get some expert view on that, we can speak actually to Lord Walney, the former advisor to the government on political violence. Great to see you again this morning. How concerned are you, having seen, of course, the emerging picture in this country in particular of terror-related incidents linked to the Iranian regime just over the last couple of years?
Yeah, this is a dangerous moment, and we have known for many years that the Iranian regime has built up a terrorist capability, which it directs from Tehran, but spreads deep into Western countries, absolutely including the UK. So the actions by Iranian state-sponsored actors or the Iranian state directly on British soil has been a problem for quite a considerable amount of time, and it ranges from the potential for terrorist acts, for violence, for death on British streets, right the way through to the regime trying to spread its Islamist message in nefarious ways through, for example, a network of British charities, infiltration into public life. And it is at times when the regime is under extreme stress like this that you may see part of it perhaps being directed by the centre, but also having the capability to be able to plan operations on its foreign soil, and so it is necessarily a time for great vigilance across security and public life. But it should also remind us, why it is that our allies have felt they have needed to take action against this terrorist regime that poses a threat to us all, and why really for the UK standing on the sidelines is not the right thing to do.
This is a dangerous time in the sense that Iran could be feeling now as though they have nothing to lose. No supreme leader. Lead officials have been taken out too. We know they have limited capabilities. They will be struck now by Israel and by the US. It is those proxies, isn't it? Also those sleeper cells in southern Europe that are more unpredictable and therefore potentially could be, in the next few days, more dangerous.
Yes, that's right. And there have been a number of Labour colleagues, friends in the House of Commons, who are looking at this situation and saying this is the moment for the UK government to do more to protect its citizens against that threat. There is necessarily a limit and a balance to what can be done overseas. That's an important question in itself, but there really ought to be no great hand-wringing over us stepping up the protective measures for our own citizens and our own way of life, and that can be bolstering ourselves against the physical security threat. But there are also a host of Iranian regime-backed entities that have been able to function here in the UK. There are charities that have been under investigation for far too long. There are a number of effectively shell companies that are treated as legitimate here, that are part of the Iranian shadow oil fleet, which enables it to finance its operations. Many of those have been prescribed, have been banned in the United States. We have taken a slower and more cautious approach. So we need to be stepping that up for our own protection alongside what is happening in the region.
Lord Waldney, thank you so much. It's always great to get your insight on these issues. Thanks for your input this morning.
Thank you very much. Now, do stay with us on GB News Breakfast. Up next, the Minister for the Middle East, Hamish Faulkner, is here with us.
5 hosts, 5 opinions, 5 fearless debates, 5 unfiltered takes on the day's news.
5 reasons not to be anywhere else on Saturday night.
This is the Saturday 5. You got me. You got me good there. Britain's biggest Saturday night TV show.
It's not a bad brand.
Yeah. Uncensored.
Very, very racy tonight.
On the unpredictable.
What did she say? Can you translate it for us?
And always entertaining.
And how can a country go from being led by William Wallace
Saturday nights from 6 p.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
You're going to want to stay tuned, trust me.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Well, I'd never heard of the guy until about 4 hours ago, but then I'd never heard of Sam Ryder. I'd never heard of Bucks Fizz before either. So who knows? I'm a bit disappointed because I thought this is the 70th Eurovision Song Contest. Why don't they send a big name, make it great glory? But they're taking a little bit of a gamble here. By all accounts, apparently the song, Scott Mills, the semi-final commentator, has said that it sounds a bit like sort of Human League meets the Pet Shop Boys.
And there's been some reporting that an unnamed act was axed from possibly representing Britain after some of the bosses involved found some unacceptable online comments. It does all point to the fact that this is going to be quite an incendiary, perhaps, edition of Eurovision in its 70th year. Plenty of countries are boycotting the event because, despite being called Eurovision, we do get inputs from countries all over the world, including from Israel, which has caused a bit of a fracas in some corners, hasn't it, Kevin?
Yeah, I've always said from day one, I mean, this will be my 27th Eurovision Song Contest, so I've been all over the globe following this show. They should never bring politics into the Eurovision Song Contest. Greece have picked their song, and I'm very sorry for anybody from Greece who's listening, but it is absolutely terrible. Estonia have picked their song, and it is absolutely amazing. It's a four-piece girl band, a bit rocky, a bit like sort of Heart would be. And I love that song. It's going to go down well in the hall, but I don't think it's going to win. We've got Albania, who tends to churn out the same sort of Balkan-sounding music every year. That'll probably finish in the top 5.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain deserves a newsroom that puts the facts and your voice first.
Well, and that's what you get on GB News. Lively debates, lively conversation.
And we're not afraid to hold power to account.
And each other. So join me, Andrew Pierce.
And me, Miriam Gates, for Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 on GB News.
Welcome back to GB News Breakfast and our continuing coverage of the fast-moving events out in the Middle East. Well, we're joined now by the Minister for North Africa and the Middle East, Hamish Faulkner. Thank you very much indeed for joining us this morning, Minister. Can I just ask you, with these reports now that RAF Akrotiri has come under drone attack last night, with more in the way of attacks on Bahrain, the British facility there, of course, with hundreds of personnel still in that locale. We've got oil and gas facilities now in Saudi Arabia coming under attack. When has the British government got to get off the fence here and actually support the United States wholeheartedly in this military operation?
Mark, the British government is not on the fence. Throughout the weekend, we have been taking action to shoot down drones.
So you support the action by the United States then, Minister?
Let me be clear, Mark. As the Prime Minister set out yesterday, we were not part of the first wave of attacks by Israel and the United States. We had a preference for a diplomatic process on resolving the issues like the nuclear program. But in the face of reckless Iranian attacks, and you've just described some of them, there are attacks which are threatening hotels, airports, of course, the many hundreds of thousands of British nationals who are in the region. We assess it's about 300,000. More than 100,000 have been in touch with the Foreign Office over the course of the weekend. In the face of those missile attacks, that recklessness on the part of the Iranians, we have given a specific and limited agreement to our United States allies in order that action can be taken against those missile launchers.
But so you're calling it a reckless attack, and yet it's still remaining specific and limited defensive action. At what point, if any, then, is the UK going to join the US in offensive
Iranian
action?
attacks are reckless. The agreement we have with the United States is specific and limited, just to distinguish between the two.
But at what point, if at any point, is the UK going to join the US in offensive action?
We are supporting the Americans to take action against the missiles and capability of the Iranians to threaten our allies, our nationals, and our interests. That is a specific and limited agreement which we've kept under review, and if we have further updates, we'll bring them forward in the usual way.
Look, we get the dilemma. Of course, you're always going on the best legal advice from Lord Herman, no doubt. But, you know, you've got a situation at the moment where you've got fighter jets up in the air over the Middle East actually shooting down missiles and drones launched from Iran, targeting allies, targeting British military and other facilities in that region. What is the difference between doing that and then going after the missile launchers before they get these munitions in the air? Surely, logically, that's the most advantageous way of ensuring that these missiles don't get through.
Those missile launchers are clearly a threat to the region, to our Gulf allies, to our nationals, and that is why we've taken the steps that the Prime Minister announced last night. This will enable action more efficiently against those launchers.
Look, you mentioned there the 300,000 British citizens in Gulf countries. The Foreign Secretary's also been mentioning them this morning. How are you going to get them safely evacuated out of the region?
So those nationals are obviously our top priority. As the Minister responsible for consular affairs, let me say a little bit directly to those people. I know that this is a distressing time with lots of fast-moving events. Clearly, while airspace is closed, there is going to be considerable disruption to the region. We will get you home as quickly and as safely as we can. Please do register your presence if you're in one of the affected countries. Follow our travel advice. Make sure you follow the advice where relevant of local authorities, and we will provide information which is absolutely up to date. Of course, we are putting in place contingency plans for all eventualities, but I do not wish to get ahead of events this morning. The key advice for British nationals in the region is to sign up for Register Your Presence where that's relevant and follow our travel advice.
Of course, you will be relying, it seems, for the most part, on civilian airlines and for the airspace in that region to be opened up to allow the evacuation of many, many thousands of British citizens. But the fact is, you might have that airspace closed for a very long time indeed. Do we, for instance, have a single Royal Naval asset in the region, Minister?
Well, Mark, I think your question is about what are the different options by which people may be evacuated. And I'm sure many of your viewers will remember previous crises where the British government has taken a range of steps and used a range of options to get British nationals home. As I say, we will get British nationals home safely, as quickly as we can, but I don't want to get ahead of events at this moment. The key advice for British nationals in the region is register your presence, follow our travel advice.
We know about the presence of Iranian sleeper cells in the UK. How concerned are you about security implications for our country? And is the UK terror threat now under review?
So we always keep our terror threat level under review. We have, as I've said to Parliament before, we have seen threats which emanate from Iran and attempted attacks on UK soil. We have effective domestic security arrangements which have foiled those attacks, and some of those attacks are now subject to a legal process. I would say to anyone considering any action in the UK of that nature, we are a capable country, more than capable of detecting threats and taking action against them, and we will announce those measures if any further are required in the usual way.
OK, I know it's always difficult to provide all the answers that we need on fast-moving situations like this, but Hamish Faulkner, thank you so much for sparing the time to speak to GB News this morning.
Thank you very much indeed. Just want to bring you this line now that France says that Israel and US strikes on Iran should have been debated at the UN beforehand. We'll bring you more on this breaking news in just a moment. Good morning, it's 9 o'clock and breaking news as the Prime Minister is criticised for his response to Iran.
Yes, it comes as Sir Keir Starmer confirmed that the US could use UK bases to strike Iran, but he stopped short of backing the war.
The United States has requested permission to use British bases. We have taken the decision to accept this request.
After sources confirm the British RAF base in Cyprus was targeted by 2 drones, is it now only a matter of time until the UK gets directly involved?
The most critical thing from the point of view of British politicians is the well-being of our service personnel and all our people in the region. It's obviously concerning to hear about this drone attack. It's disappointing to see the Prime Minister unable to give strong leadership at a time when this country badly needs it.
Well, Donald Trump has returned to the White House as the US confirms 3 military personnel have been killed, 5 others injured. He's warning the American people that more US service personnel lives may be lost.
Combat operations continue at this time in full force, and they will continue until all of our objectives are achieved.
With thousands of Britons stranded across the Middle East, chaos is ensuing at airports like Heathrow this morning, where Jack Carson is live for us.
Well, cancellations here at Heathrow Airport as more than 100,000 people in the Gulf region register their presence with different embassies. The government say, we will get you home.
Also on the programme, the Home Secretary exclusively tells GB News that she would be willing to live next to a migrant camp. Oh, really? Here's a sneak peek.
And would you live next door to Krober or next door to a migrant camp?
Well, look, I mean, I'm in a constituency that's had asylum hotels as well.
Happy, would you, with your children?
Look, I do understand, but look, we've got to put people somewhere.
Hello there, good morning. It's the first week of meteorological spring. For some, that means sunshine. For others, it's quite a wet day in store. Stay tuned and I'll have all the details.
Good morning, it's just gone 9 o'clock. I'm Ellie Costello.
And I'm Mark White. This is GB News Breakfast.
Got breaking news out of Bahrain this morning, haven't we, Mark?
Yeah, really concerning news of a 3rd day of strike activity from the Iranians on the port facility in Bahrain, which of course is home to the US 5th Fleet headquarters, and also the British Royal Navy has about 300 military personnel in Bahrain at the moment. Another missile strike this morning, which we're told has resulted in at least 1 death. So we await word as to who may have been caught up in this, Ellie, but very, very concerning images.
Yeah, certainly. They certainly are. Also want to bring you this line from Cyprus. Of course, we saw the RAF base, Akrotiri, was hit by a drone strike last night. Not 1 drone, but 2. Cyprus this morning has postponed a planned meeting of EU ministers due to that incident. That is from the Cyprus EU presidency spokesperson giving that statement in the past few minutes.
OK, well, we're joined now by former IDF intelligence officer and... Oh, OK. Right, well, another sort of important line that we wanted to bring you was the situation with Aramco, the oil and gas refinery there in Saudi Arabia. That was hit by a drone, one of a number of drones launched, and reports that it may have been launched from the Houthi rebels based out in Yemen. If that is true, that is of real concern, because we've had Hezbollah, that terrorist group, linked to Iran, supporting Iran, that has now joined the fight, that is believed to have launched those drones at the British base, RAF Akrotiri, in Cyprus. So if you now have the Houthis, that other terrorist entity, that Iran-supporting proxy in Yemen, firing drones off towards the Aramco facility in Saudi Arabia, then it is of very, very serious concern. You're looking at images there of smoke billowing from that oil refinery. It has been closed down while they deal with what is clearly a very significant blaze. And it comes, Ellie, just a day after a number of vessels in the Strait of Hormuz and actually in the Strait of Oman were targeted by Iranians, and a couple of them were crippled.
Yeah, and we can actually see that there are transponders on those ships in the Strait of Hormuz, and you can see that there are large groups of ships that are just sat, not only in the Indian Ocean, but also in the Strait of Hormuz, not able to move, and actually, in time, may become targets themselves.
These are the latest images now from Iran, provided to us by the Israeli and US military, showing strikes. Now, that was very clearly there, a strike on, and again, on missile launching facilities. The Israelis have said that they want to focus very significantly on Iran's capability and ability to launch these missiles and drones towards not just Iran, but of course its neighbours, as we've seen in the last few days. And you can just see, I mean, right on the ground there, multiple launchers that are taken out. That might be why we are seeing, for a few hours now, no activity in terms of air raids, missile alerts in Israel. We have, for 2 days, been getting, at times, just 7 or 8 minute intervals between salvos of missiles coming over from Iran. And that slowed down clearly, very significantly, because the last missile strike came over 3 hours ago into central and southern Israel. Nothing since then. That doesn't mean, listen, we're not going to be naive about this. Iran has capability still, without a doubt. And I'm sure we'll see more salvos of missiles and drones launched in the coming hours, Ellie. But for the time being, at least, a bit of respite for people in Israel with no salvos coming over.
And those capabilities may be limited. We were just speaking to the government about 10 minutes ago about this, well, quite an undertaking to get around 300,000 Brits who are in the region, in the Middle East and the Gulf, that's residents, those on holiday, those in transit, safely out of the region. Let's head now to GB News national reporter Jack Carson, who's at Heathrow Airport for us. And Jack, how's it looking there this morning?
Well, serious disruption, Ellie. We know that major carriers, including the likes of British Airways, Virgin Atlantic, Emirates, Qatar Airways, have grounded services with all flights in and out of Dubai International Airport, as well as Al Maktoum International Airport, suspended until further notice. It's not just here at Heathrow Airport that passengers are having problems, both trying to leave the UK to head to these destinations, and of course, as you can imagine, in the region trying to get back as well. At Gatwick, a number of Emirates, Qantas and Wizz Air flights have also been grounded, while both scheduled Stansted services to Dubai have also been cancelled as well. The situation is, of course, with so many international airspaces closed, flights just aren't able to take place, and that's also impacting longer-term flights as well to places beyond the Middle East, where those planes would usually enter that airspace on their journeys. But this is the situation we've got, of course, at the moment, is that we believe more than 100,000 British citizens have registered their presence in the region. That is giving the UK government a sense of the kind of operation that they've now got to mount to try and support those people, in terms of supporting those that haven't even necessarily registered their presence looking to come back, but also possibly actually just living in the region as expats. We believe that somewhere between 200 and 300,000 British nationals in the Gulf, as the job of the government is to try and support them where possible. Now, they've asked British nationals in those regions such as Bahrain, Israel, Kuwait and the Palestinian territories, Qatar, the UAE, to register their presence. That allows them essentially to receive updates. As you've been seeing all morning, this is such a fast moving picture. It is important that the information from 1 hour might change to another, and so that is why if you register your presence in the region, you'll be able to receive updates from from the respective British embassy and the Foreign Office. People also urged just to generally check the Foreign Office's advice, which, as I was saying, could change quite rapidly. Yesterday, the Prime Minister Keir Starmer talked about the 200,000 British citizens in the region. That includes, of course, residents, as we were saying, families, those on holiday, those stopping over between different regions, expats, as we were saying. And he said, I ask all people in the region to please register your presence and follow that advice. He says this is a deeply worrying time, and we will continue to do all we can that support you. You've heard from a government minister not long ago here on Breakfast who promised British nationals we will get you home, and this is where really the operational planning comes into it. How exactly are those 100,000 plus people that have already registered their presence going to get home? Will it be commercial flights? Will it be something more done directly from the UK government, and possibly using any kind of Ministry of Defence operational vehicle that they might be able to have to get people out of that region? People, of course, in those regions have been are told to remain indoors in secure locations, while those in Jordan, Syria, Lebanon, Iraq and Yemen have all been, and Turkey even, have all been instructed to remain vigilant and take shelter if it is advised to do so. Now, we understand that no British national has so far been killed or injured in the conflict, but yesterday Defence Secretary John Healey talked about the some 300 UK troops who, of course, had been within a few hundred yards of certain Iranian strikes on military bases in the region. So as you can imagine, here at Heathrow Airport, a lot of flight cancellations, a lot of people stuck here on the ground with flights just simply not going ahead. And as we were talking about it, in terms of actually, operationally in the region, this is the job of the Foreign Office now to work out exactly how they're going to start getting people home.
Jack, thank you very much indeed. Jack Carson out there at Heathrow Airport. Well, we can speak now to someone who's stuck out at the epicentre of everything that's going on in Dubai. Neil Dutson, a diamond dealer out there in Dubai. Listen, Neil, I know it must be pretty nerve-wracking out there because Dubai has been struck so many times in the last few days. Just tell us about your experience.
Yeah, I think, good morning, firstly, but I think for a lot of people it will be very frightening. It kind of kicked off 2 days ago, and, I think taking advice from the Foreign Office is paramount, as is taking advice from the UAE government, and following either of those on any social media is a must. And I think, it's just common sense. A lot of it's common sense. Yes, it is pretty frightening, especially for lots of people who haven't been in this situation before, and families, etc. I happened to be out here for work, thought that I was going to be here for quite a few months, but I'm not now. It's just trying to get us out of the country is the main priority now. And also, for people with families stuck in hotels, it's an extremely worrying time.
Obviously compounded by the fact, Neil, that, the instinct would be get yourself to the airport and get the heck out of there. But, of course, the airport has been struck twice now. Flights are suspended, and the message from local authorities where you are, and indeed the British government, is just hunker down. But that's no guarantee of safety, given these missiles flying around and debris coming down unpredictably.
Oh, totally. And you're right. The message is don't go near an airport. There really is no point for a start. And secondly, if you're in your local vicinity, just stay in your apartment, stay in your local area. If you have a house or you've rented an apartment here, then stay there. It really makes sense. The biggest issue, from what I understand, reading all the UAE social media, is the debris that's coming down. It's not necessarily the missiles or the drones, because they have such an incredible system here. They've been amazing to knock most of those out. But it's the debris coming down, and that's what's going to injure someone or hurt them very badly. Just stay indoors.
What's the sense on the ground in Dubai? Are people panicking? We have seen some reports that some of the supermarket shelves are bare, that some people have been panic buying. Is that anything that you've experienced?
Weirdly enough, I did go into a supermarket last night to get some water, and there wasn't a lot left. I think I've got to be honest, Ellie, it's pretty much business as usual. You know, I've seen most people, going to work. I find it hilarious that, the Deliveroo and not Uber Eats, but some of these other companies, they're all bombing around town on their little mopeds, and it's kind of, why would you? But as people need to eat, I guess, and these guys are obviously quite resilient and don't really care. But no, I think it's pretty much business as usual. I see people going to work. All the Uber drivers are working. It's quite weird. But going back to that, safety is everything. And I think just, as much as you can, stay indoors. I see those are my photos from my apartment.
As you're speaking, we are playing, I think it's images provided by your good self. Can you just explain what we're seeing here?
Yeah, sure. So that video there, right, that was the first evening, and I thought, gosh, that's a bit weird. And I just literally walking back to my apartment in JVT, and I assume that that's just debris. Now, that's from my balcony and of my apartment. And that basically, I believe, is a military base about 20, 30 kilometers away. It could be the new airport. I'm not really sure. I couldn't pinpoint that. But I saw the same photograph from above today on I think it's the I newspaper. So I had that angle, and then a drone had obviously taken a photo from above it. But yeah, that was really worrying. It was very loud, very noisy. Last night, I didn't hear too much, but this morning I heard 6 explosions. And I think they're just interceptions by this amazing system they have out here in Dubai.
Safe, Neil, considering you've got that system overhead in Dubai, or are you feeling scared at this point? You're being very British about it, very, very resilient. But how are you actually feeling?
I've got to be honest. I think, if my family were here, it would be a very different scenario. They were here and left last Tuesday. We were on holiday, and I would have been a very different Neil Dutson. I've kind of I've unfortunately been in many of these situations in my life, and I'm okay about it. The first evening, yes, it was frightening because we all hid down in the basement car park 3 stories down, and you don't like that. It's not natural. But I can imagine a lot of people who haven't ever experienced anything like this. It's frightening. It's utterly it's just not natural, as I say, and we don't like it, and no one does. But again, being sensible, just stay indoors and don't go outside.
OK, well, Neil Dutson, do stay safe, and thank you so much for joining us on GB News Breakfast.
Just a little bit of breaking news here. The Iran's ambassador to the IAEA, which is the Independent International Atomic Energy Authority, I should say, has said that Israel and the US attacked Iranian nuclear facilities yesterday. We did get some reports on Saturday when this first started that one of the nuclear facilities at Isfahan had been targeted, but an indication there from the IAEA's ambassador in Iran that more nuclear enrichment facilities have been attacked by the US and Israel.
Now, 18 minutes past 9, we have been talking this morning about the conflict spreading, and Hezbollah did choose to strike Israel overnight. And let's get some response to this by former IDF intelligence officer and co-founder of Middle East 24, Dan Pfefferman, who is in Tel Aviv for us this morning. Good morning to you, Dan. What is your response to Hezbollah choosing to strike Israel overnight?
We've been waiting to see if Hezbollah is going to join the fight. Of course, Hezbollah is the most famous, the most well-invested, the most well-built of Iran's proxy armies. Over the years, the Iranian regime, through the IRGC, has funded, armed, trained Hezbollah as its main direct proxy with a budget of close to $1 billion a year. Prior to 2 years ago, when Hezbollah joined the October 7th attack on Israel, joining its counterparts in Hamas, Hezbollah was estimated to have 150,000 rockets and missiles aimed at Israel, and to be one of the best armed and trained and equipped terrorist militia forces in the world, stronger than the Lebanese state, which it had essentially hijacked. After overreaching in the famous pager incident, Israel had really taken down Hezbollah a number of pegs, if you will, and Hezbollah was estimated to be some 20%, 30% at most of what it previously had been. And so, you know, the whole point that Hezbollah was built up was to apply forward pressure on Israel from Israel's border. And the big question was, would Hezbollah join the fight against Israel should the U.S. and or Israel attack? And so we've been waiting to see what would happen. Of course, Hezbollah has been weakened, had been pushed back from the border with Israel. And now last night, there was the first time in many months since the ceasefire took place between Israel and Hezbollah, this rocket fire, and then Israel conducted a series of airstrikes. These are, of course, pinpoint airstrikes aimed at Hezbollah leaders across the country. And the question is will the Lebanese state be able to assert itself against Hezbollah to prevent a further escalation, or will Israel continue with its plans to further weaken, further degrade Hezbollah?
And as you say, of course, Hezbollah has been significantly degraded by the Israelis, but it's also still a threat. And we believe actually that the drones that were fired at RAF Akrotiri in Cyprus may well have come from Hezbollah. Also, we're looking at images now of the Aramco oil refinery in Saudi Arabia, which was targeted by drones, and a suggestion that they may have come from the Houthis in Yemen. Do you think that's credible? I mean, we haven't heard much from them either, but do you think the Houthis may well have joined the fight now as well?
I haven't seen the reports, but it certainly would be credible. It certainly would be plausible. You're talking again about proxy armies, a main part of Iran's defense strategy of how it projects force, right? It doesn't have the air forces or the navies to send forces across the region, certainly across the world. And so the strategy that Iran has invested in over the years was one based on, of course, a nuclear missile, nuclear deterrent, ballistic missile capacity. And you can see they're firing ballistic missiles at almost every moderate country across the region. They fired missiles at about 7 or 8 countries by my count so far. And then, of course, operating, building, and acting these proxies. Hezbollah can be seen as a direct operational arm of Iran. The Houthis less so, but still something that they have armed over the years and can employ in times such as these. And so it certainly would be plausible. It certainly would be within their playbook, their modus operandi, if they were enacting Hezbollah against Cyprus, against Israel for sure, against American, British, or other targets in the Mediterranean, and then, of course, the Houthis in the Gulf. This is exactly what the Iranian militia architecture was set up to do, and it was so degraded by Israel over the last 2 years, but remnants of it are still there. And of course, my sense is that the Iranian regime in Tehran, the Islamic regime, is sensing that it is really on the ropes, and so there's no point in kind of holding back any longer.
Dan, we've got to cut it short there, but thank you very much again, Dan Pfefferman, joining us from Israel.
Yeah, and in a related report, this from the IDF, the Israeli military has just said it's precisely struck a senior Hezbollah terrorist in Beirut, and that follows a statement earlier on saying that the Hezbollah chief is now a marked target for elimination.
Time is running away with us, but this is really important. Our political editor, Christopher Hope, spoken to the Home Secretary. Take it away.
Last week in Copenhagen, I went to the Hope to look at migrant camps, arrival deportation camps with Shabana Mahmood. That is the idea this government wants to do, be tougher on migration, despite losing that Gorton and Denton by-election last week. From today, they will review anyone who's been here after 30 months. If the country's safe, they'll be sent back, rather than wait 5 years, which allows migrants to get stuck into the system, get support on the NHS and benefits. So that's what she's looking at doing. So were this war not breaking out in the Middle East, this would be a massive deal for, I think, for GB News me, certainly, and also for the wider Labour Party. I did a long interview with her, which you'll find online on YouTube. But I did ask you a couple of questions, one of which I said to her, big issue for our viewers and listeners with Crowborough is, would you live near a migrant camp? I wanted to ask you if she would live near one. Of course she would. Here's what she told us.
You know, we do have to get out of hotels. We've said we'll get out of every single asylum hotel. That's a manifesto commitment by the end of this Parliament. So we've got to do that. And military sites are a good alternative.
So what do you say to people near Crowborough? And would you live next door to Crowborough or next door to a migrant camp?
Well, look, I mean, I'm in a constituency that's had asylum hotels as well.
Happy, would you, with your children?
Look, I do understand. But look, we've got to put people somewhere. We've got to address the pull factor, the public order issues. We've got to address the impact on local communities as well. So what I would say is, you know, we are putting in a facility that will be well managed with you know, security coverage that is 24/7, working really closely.
They can come and go, can't they?
Working really closely with the local police as well. Yes, because they're not detained, so it's not like a prison. It is an accommodation facility whilst people's claims are being heard.
There we have it. That's Shabana Mahmood saying she would, in the national interest, live next door to a migrant camp. Let's see what viewers think of that. And finally, she did say that the grooming gangs inquiry, we know all about that from our work here, particularly from Charlie Peters, is up and running effectively already and will start work formally when the terms of reference are published next month. And
I can exclusively reveal, while she's talking all about migration, that we are now heading for 3-4 days of really good weather in the Channel. Chris, our producer down there, expecting significant arrivals in the coming hours. Normally be our lead story.
Yeah. Well, we'll have all of that across GB News. Thank you very much, Christopher Hope.
Good to see you.
And thank you, Mark White, for being here on GB News.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Britain's Newsroom coming up at 9:30. Andrew Pearce and Miriam Cates are here to tell us all about it. Morning, you two.
Good morning. Well, lots to come on both those stories, actually. We will be covering a bit more on Shabana Mahmood's crackdown on refugees. Of course, there is a link between the two stories. Crisis in the Middle East could fuel a further refugee crisis. It's certainly what happened last time.
Yeah, absolutely will. Reform press conference at 11. I'm not quite sure what that's going to be about. Robert Gentry's got an announcement he says is interesting. We're not convinced it is. But we'll be covering it anyway.
We will. But first of all, we do have your weather.
Thank you, Britain, for the thousands of you who are becoming friends of GB News each and every week.
Good morning, this is the latest AI travel news from gbnews.com. High winds are currently making crossings particularly tricky on the A87 Skye Bridge. On the M4 eastbound, a serious incident is leading to a lane closure between junction 35 at Pencode and junction 34 at Miskin. Meanwhile, on the A449 southbound in Staffordshire, congestion is rapidly building between the A5 and the M54, with delays of approximately 20 minutes. Additionally, on the trains, Greater Anglia is reporting significant disruption between Lowestoft and Ipswich, and London Overground services face disruptions between Willesden Junction and Stratford in London. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Good afternoon, Britain. Weekdays from midday.
Well, I've done a few things on the streets in the past. I went out on the streets in COVID, taking a hymn and a prayer, trying to lift spirits when we were all confined to our homes. But I've also seen other priests from different traditions do it in their robes and getting out and being public. And I just think it's so important for the church today to be seen, to be heard. We've got a voice, we've got good news. So I decided to give it a go last year. I'd done it the year before, actually, but I decided to give it a go last minute again last year, and a colleague of mine or two came to help, and they decided to film a bit of it and just put this thing out on TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, and it had an amazing response. Millions of people watched it, which took me by surprise. The ashes are mixed with oil and then put on people's foreheads, and I heard a beautiful description of what that represents from a Catholic priest, Father Mike Schmitz, who said, the ashes remind me that I'm a sinner, but the cross reminds me I have a saviour.
Well, on that note, we've got a minute of the programme left, and I think you've brought along some ash to bless us.
I've brought a bit of ash to bless you guys with, so I better, so I'm not left out, do it myself. So the sign of the cross.
Oh no, you have to clean your hands on that first for me.
No, I have allergies. You have to clean your hands on that.
Oh, right, OK.
Well,
I'll do a separate...
do it to me.
I'll do it to you, Tom, and then a separate finger. Receive the sign of the cross and believe on the Lord Jesus, Tom. He loves you, and you will live forever.
Oh,
Nana?
God, no, can't live forever.
Receive the sign of the cross. For dust you are, and to dust you will return.
That's
but
kind
the
of
Lord
scratchy.
Jesus Christ lives forever.
Scratchy, isn't it?
Amen. Yeah, it is a bit scratchy. Sorry about that.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Good morning, it's Monday the 2nd of March, live across the UK, Britain's newsroom with Andrew Pearce and Miriam Cates.
Well, there's been another U-turn from Sir Keir Starmer.
The United States has requested permission to use British bases. We have taken the decision to accept this request.
Keir Starmer giving the green light to use Fairford in Gloucestershire and Diego Garcia in the Chagos Islands. But just a few hours later, the British RAF base in Cyprus was targeted by 2 drones.
Combat operations continue at this time in full force, and they will continue until all of our objectives are achieved.
Well, that's President Donald Trump. He's returned to the White House from Florida as he warns Americans that more US personnel could lose their lives.
And there are thousands and thousands of stranded Brits. The government is working on a rescue plan to evacuate tens of thousands out of the region.
And predictably, oil prices have surged after 3 ships are attacked near the Strait of Hormuz. Will we see the price at the forecourt rise too?
And would you live next door to Kroger or next door to a migrant camp?
Well, look, I mean, I'm in a constituency that's had my asylum hotels as well.
Happy, would you, with your children?
Look, I do understand, but look, we've got.
The Home Secretary Shabana Mahmood exclusively telling GB News she would be willing to live next to a migrant camp, as today she scraps permanent refugee status. That's a bold step by the Home Secretary. It's one I certainly